All right, and so I'll call us to order at 6:01. And we've got Chris for a minute taker. Before we get going on things, I just wanted to take a minute and have everybody introduce themselves to Brad. We saw him last night in the meeting, but we didn't really get a chance to take a minute and introduce all ourselves. So just for grins, go ahead and introduce yourself, and if you can think on the spot, give them a little pearl of wisdom you'd like to share with them tonight. I guess I'll start. I'm Dawn Griswold. We work together on the Mount Abraham board, and my pearl of wisdom would be always assume good intentions. Looks like Andrew, you're next.
Hi, I'm Andrew from New Haven. Were you on the board before, Brad? On a board?
I worked on the renovation committee a couple of years ago. And then I was on the old Mount Abe board for, I don't know, what was that? 6 months? Something like that.
Yeah, so my only pearl of wisdom had been, if you hadn't been on a board, which was that, at least for me, it took a couple of years to figure out exactly how the whole system works and to be able to ask questions that seemed informed. So it took me a while.
I promise not to ask any questions.
All right, Krista, you're next.
Hi, Brad. Nice to see you. I'm a rep from Bristol, and we've met before. And my pearl of wisdom is to have a good sense of humor.
Yeah, right, exactly. Well, Hannah and Abby are pretty close, I think, too.
All right, and Kevin.
Hi, Kevin Hansen. I represent Bristol. And I'm not sure. I guess my pearl of wisdom would be try to be flexible, I guess. So.
All right.
Kevin, you're really a Starksboro guy, though. So.
Well, yeah. My daughter dated somebody from Starksboro once in high school, and she picked on him one day about being in the Hicks, and I said, Lisa, I said, half those people planted in Starksboro, your ancestors. So that kind of gives her perspective.
Steve.
Hey, Brad. So my key word for board work is balance. Keep your balance. But anyway, Brad and I know each other quite well. We talk a lot at the recycle on Saturdays. Good to see you again.
Good to see you too.
All right, Sandy.
Hi, Brad. I'm Sandy from Lincoln. And I just came back recently myself as well, Brad. So really it's about just keeping to it, I guess, right? No second guessing joining back in.
All right, Rob.
Hi, Brad. Welcome aboard. My name's Rob Backlund. I live up in Lincoln, and I think in the year that I've been on the board, be easy on yourself.
Thanks, Rob.
Okay, Dave.
Hi, Brad. Welcome to the board. I can see Starksboro from my house, but I live in Bristol and I'm a Bristol rep. I live by question everything.
Yeah, it's good, Dave. I just always remember you coming to the house and looking for a signature. Back in the day.
Yeah, once or twice, no doubt.
Liz.
Hi, I think that my advice is to always step forward, or at least the main thing that I keep trying to focus on for me where I am right now is that to always step forward with a positive attitude, kind of that resiliency thing, and always noticing the connections and the ways we rely on each other. And I just try to remember that we're role models for the kids. they're looking to us, and we need to be what we hope they will grow into. So nice to meet you.
All right. And Kristen, who's on the scene.
Yeah, I'm on the scene if you need me to interview anybody. Brad, thank you for stepping up. And if you thought the fixing up Mount A building was controversial and whipped up a lot of energy, wait till you see this one, the new one, right? Consolidation possibly. But thank you for stepping up. And this is my 9th year on the board or 10th, I can't remember. And so part of mine is, still do your life. So as you can see, I'll be leaving this location shortly, but my daughter had a lacrosse game and my son still has a baseball game. So I'm going to be doing a remote location listening and leave shortly. But thank you again for stepping up.
Thanks, Kristen.
And then we have two members that are going to come in a little later. Maybe we'll have a chance to stop and say hello then. And our student reps are not here tonight either. So we're missing them as well. But Brad, did you want to say anything?
No, obviously I'm a little bit overwhelmed by all the information, and I know that there's a steep learning curve.
Yeah.
And I know that there's my sense is there's a fairly interesting road ahead, and I think that one of the things that is the thing I'm good at is trying to stay with the program and have a pretty thick skin, so not to take things too personally. So I think that's going to be important as we move forward with some of the issues that confront us.
All right. And it might be helpful for you, Brad, to know that we have the admin team, some of the admin team here with us. So I have Katrina. I think you might remember Katrina, but go ahead and say hello, Katrina.
Hi, nice to see you again.
Hi,
I'm Assistant Superintendent. I've been in the district for 12 years. Moncton resident, kids have gone through the schools. It's nice to see you. Thanks for stepping up.
Thank you.
And then we have Floyd.
Hi, Brad. I'm Floyd. I'm the business manager. Welcome. Good luck, and don't hesitate to reach out if there's anything I can do to help at all.
Appreciate that, Floyd.
And then we have Susan.
Hi, Brad. I'm Susan Brule, and I'm the Director of Student Support Services for the district pre-K through 12. And I also am a resident of New Haven, and I have 3 kids, 2 who have graduated and finished UVM, or one in the middle of UVM, and then my son will be a senior next year.
Oh,
welcome.
Great. So he's in my daughter's class then.
It must be, yes.
And last but not least, we have Patrick.
Hi, Brad. How you doing? Thanks for stepping up.
Appreciate. Yeah, thanks, Patrick. Good to see you again.
Yeah, you are spot on. It will. The word I choose to use frequently is interesting. It is and will be interesting.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of adjectives we could use. That's a good neutral one that doesn't offend anybody.
All right. So now we'll move along. Is there any public comment at this time? I see we have a few members of the public. If you want to raise your virtual hand, I'll call on you. If you want to have anything to say. Okay, I'm not seeing anybody, so let's move along. We have the consent agenda to approve tonight. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved, Krista.
Krista?
Second, Andrew.
All right. All right. Just a reminder, we do the consent agenda all in one motion, and we don't usually discuss it, just it streamlines some of our process. So all those in favor of approving the consent agenda, please say aye.
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 Okay, any opposed? Any abstentions? All right. Okay, so that's passed.
John, could I just add for Brad, if he's not aware, if you did see something you wanted to discuss, you would just ask to pull it from the agenda prior to the motion, and then we would discuss it and then approve the remainder.
Okay, thank you. All right, our next item is the Executive Limitations Monitoring Report, and agenda item is an action item to accept the monitoring report for 2.1 treatment of current and prospective students and parents / guardians.
So moved, Krista.
Okay.
Steve, second.
And Andrew.
Steve, second. All right. Discussion. Some members did complete the worksheet. I have that, but if you want to go through what you noted on the worksheet and share it, I will attach the worksheets that I received to the monitoring report that will go on the Google Drive. Kevin.
So I did make a couple comments. One is in regards to item 3. It talks about ADA accessibility, and the examples for evidence were capital projects to improve certain physical features, but I didn't really understand there to be a statement as to whether we're compliant with respect to physical barriers at all of the campuses or not. So I highlighted that. And then the other thing is kind of a moot point, and I think we've discussed this before, and it's just a matter of time to integrate policies and procedures, but there was a call out specifically for something at an illustration of something at Bristol Elementary, and then there was reference to high school policies, which obviously covers those entities, but it doesn't necessarily cover everything. And I know some of them were MAUSD policies, but seems to me like we should be working towards that, which I think we are. So I did note that as well.
All right, Rob.
Yeah, thanks, Don. I did fill out part of a worksheet, and as I'm still wrapping my head around policy governance, I think this policy, at least the opening line, is really powerful in regards to when we emphasize social and emotional well-being of our students. And I'm not going to reference any specific incident, but just I think a procedure that I would like to learn a little bit more about. And because I'm wondering what the line of evidence is for this procedure, in that it meets this policy, and that's regarding of the use of I don't know exactly what the term is, but I'll just say padded cell in our schools. And I guess, how does that procedure fit within the bounds of this policy? And Patrick, your interpretation of it, not being an expert, not being in the buildings. I mean, obviously context is very important, but just as a procedure or a practice in our school district, how is that best practice?
Sorry about that. I had to find my cursor. It was on a different screen. Yeah, I think, that's something that we continually have conversations about. The idea of having a space that has sort of, padding on the floor, padding on the walls. The idea behind that is oftentimes when a student is being physically aggressive, they risk harming themselves and harming others. And so we find ourselves from time to time needing a space where if a student is needing to regulate and they're being physically aggressive and they risk harming themselves, if there isn't some protection somewhere, either they run the risk to themselves or someone else. In the absence of protection, we put adults in a position to protect the student, which puts the adult in harm's way. So that's the thinking behind those safe spaces where students can become regulated without causing injury to themselves or others. There are absolutely different philosophies about the practice. There are different approaches to creating spaces where students are safe as they work to become more regulated. And, incidents that come up often prompt conversations about the practice, and is that the appropriate practice? Is there a different practice that can achieve the same benefit, that has less stigma? Those are conversations that we have from time to time, and that we'll continue to have as we try to find that line of safety and offering the opportunity to regulate.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, I guess for me, big picture, and I look at my daughter, that's what I spend all my day doing. There's so much cultural layering to it, and I know we're not an island, but it's hard to just see as a parent and think about, not that it's not best practice. I just want to know more about it because it seems so foreign to me. And yeah, I appreciate that. And I would love if you can point me in the direction of if there is literature out there. I would just love to learn a little bit more about that. I used to work with adjudicated youth that were brought to me in full on, chains and restraints, and we take them out in the woods for 7 weeks at a time. And we had a different approach, and I'm not saying it was a better approach, but it was probably maybe different than that. And so that was my concern, is how do we think about it if that's a procedure or practice meeting this policy, because I'm struggling at the moment to see that.
Okay, Krista and then Liz.
Thanks. Yeah, one of my comments, I think I've actually answered for myself, because I was asking where, what I was looking for was the parental rights for students receiving special education services, and that handbook, which I think is referenced later on in the policy. But I was looking for it in evidence of the first part of the monitoring report, because I think that helps to link, to lay out all of the different services and ways that families are communicated about those. So it might be helpful to move that there, or to include that there as well. And I don't know, sort of along the lines of what Rob was talking about, if we might also consider as evidence any references to reporting we do as a district to the state around our support services and interventions for students, because I'm guessing there's some sort of reporting we're required to do, but helping us have context as a board, what is it we're required to report, and how does that align with other districts or best practices? That might also satisfy some of that questioning. So that's a comment I didn't put in the worksheet, but I'm adding in now, if that's okay. And then let's see, I had something else I wanted to ask about. Related to what Kevin was talking about around accessibility. Yeah, I'd agree. I'd also like to see an expansion of, what we're currently doing and what we hope to do. It references a couple of things at Robinson, and I don't know if that's just meant to be, just one example in a sea of others, but I think there's other work to be done in Robinson in particular. So just like a status update on that would be helpful. And then the last comment I had, sorry, I'm bouncing back and forth between my notes and your report. I think it was around I guess it's back up to that first section around conditions that are inequitable, in particular inequitable. I'd like to see this board get more clear on what that means for us, and therefore we could ask the superintendent to provide evidence around that more clearly. The VSBA is holding a session on May 4th or 6th or something like that, for boards to think about how to monitor the implementation of educational equity. And so I think, just what I understand of policy governance in this monitoring report exercise is partly to help us ensure our policies are robust enough as things evolve and change. And so that's a place where I'd like this group to think about how we define that and what it is we hope to see as evidence of students and parents and guardians being treated equitably. And those are my comments.
Thank you. Liz.
I guess my hope had just been that if we were going to talk more about any of our concerns around how we handle really challenging situations, that there had been an offer to do it in an executive session. And so maybe we could put that on the list. I would be extremely uncomfortable. I mean, if my child's challenges were being discussed at a board meeting, and I know we're trying to do it, and that was really attempted. I know that Rob, like, you have a lot more experience than I do, and I realize you weren't trying to do that, but that really makes me uncomfortable to refer to specific children here. So if we could set up an executive session, then maybe we could have a good conversation there.
We have the ability to do that later on in the meeting, to go into an executive session to discuss the academic records or suspension or disciplinary discipline of students. So we can speak in general terms now about our processes, but anything specific should be held, as Liz said, for executive session. I see Kristen's hand up.
Yeah, thanks. So, and I know it's very upsetting that some children become as upset as they do at school. And I work at 3 schools who have similar areas. And if we wanted to, we could have someone come in, and I'm sure Katrina could find someone who could do a training on us, maybe even at the retreat, about trauma-informed care. And then that would help explain the tears that occur and how the staff does that. So maybe that's something we could do at the retreat if that's something people have an interest in.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else around the monitoring report? Okay. So then I've got a couple of questions if you don't have any more. Based on the information provided, and I'll ask you to do a thumbs up, and I'm going to mark the thumbs up on this. Does the board find that the superintendent's interpretation is reasonable? If you are saying yes, please put your thumbs up now. Oh, Liz has got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 yes, and no. Okay, so there's 1. Okay. Based on the information provided, does the board find that the data demonstrates the accomplishment of this interpretation? Yes, thumbs up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6. No.
Dawn, I think I should sort of abstain from this because I have no background. I just feel uncomfortable saying yes or no.
Okay, all right, thank you. So I saw 2 no's. And?
Dawn, can I change mine to abstaining as well? I feel like I'm kind of behind the curve.
Okay.
Only been in for a few months, so I'd rather abstain on that too. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Okay, so that one, as a majority, we have a majority that say yes, it demonstrates. So based on that information, the motion is to accept the monitoring report. All those in favor of accepting the monitoring report 2.1 treatment of current and prospective students, parents, and guardians, please give a thumbs up if you are in favor of accepting it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 in favor. All right, if you're opposed, now please put your thumbs up. 2. Okay, and if you are abstaining, please put your thumbs up now. 2 abstaining.
That's 3, Don.
Oh, sorry.
Dave did his thumb.
Oh, where did Dave go? Oh, I've lost Dave. Oh, there he is. Okay.
Kristen, you still have your hand up from before.
All right. So the motion carries 6 in favor, 2 opposed, and 3 abstaining. Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
And I know I should know this, but I get muddled when we do these reports. And so my reason for no votes was the hope that we could then have non-compliance in a certain area, which would ask Patrick to go back and get more information. I don't know if I voted to reflect that, but that was, I just wanted to ask if, so how do we as a board, and I understand I can't just request that. So if the whole group doesn't agree, I'm good with that. But my vote was to reflect my desire to go back, to ask Patrick to go back for more information. Did I vote in that direction, or is that, I'm just looking for clarity.
Well,
again, I know I should know this, but since Patrick reported compliance and I'm feeling like we may not be because there's a lack of data, I just want to better understand how to vote to reflect that.
So not accepting the monitoring report is one way to sort of keep to move the process to that point of figuring. There is also the option at any time to revisit a policy. Just we'd have to plan for it. I mean, it's not something like we can say, hey, next month we're going to talk about this because we already have built that agenda. So we have the right at any time, but again, it has to be a majority to do that kind of thing. And right now, the way everything came out with the votes, people accept the monitoring report. I think Patrick clearly has heard the feedback, and the notes will be attached to the official board response. All the notes that were filled out on the worksheet will be attached. So I don't know his process, but I imagine he revisits the last monitoring report and looks at all this as he goes ahead.
And that's sort of the difference, right? So if the monitoring report is not accepted, then the expectation is that I take this feedback and immediately make changes to the monitoring report and resubmit it for board approval. If the monitoring report is accepted as it was, and there are comments about improvements for future monitoring reports, then I look back to the notes when I'm writing this monitoring report for next year, and I work to include or reflect the comments that were made from tonight. Again, where I can, and it does get a little tricky because an individual board member making comments doesn't necessarily direct me to make change, but I always take it into consideration. And if it makes sense to me and I understand it, sometimes that's the trick, sometimes the notes lack some specificity that might be needed to help me really nail what it is that seemed to be missing. But I always read those and do my best to try and accommodate where I can when there seemed to be something missing.
I appreciate that. And the only other piece, it sounds like work that could be done would be on our part as far as the policy itself and what I was mentioning around, equity, for example, and where, Don, does that go into our hopper? And also just, again, I'm just one person, but where do we, if we decide as a board, we want to look at any part of this policy more closely, because they really do steer the work, and I just want to understand how we.
So, I mean, we try to stick to that board work plan, but something specifically around policy, if you think about that worksheet to kind of add an agenda item, if you look at that, that really can help explain the way to do it. This is a policy issue, and, updating the equity language was done before, but maybe it's time to do it again. So you could request an agenda item specific to the policy and updating it. And then that sort of initiates the board conversation where we get to talk about, what do we need to add to get it to say what we want? That's where we tweak things, not telling Patrick, do this, this, and this, but this is what we want. This is what we want to guide you, and being really clear in that. So we could add an item to revisit the policy and consider updating the language or changing the language through a discussion that way.
Got it. Thank you.
Sure. Steve?
Actually, Dave was first.
Oh, okay. Dave.
So thanks for those comments, Krista. So I abstain because partly because I didn't do as much homework as I probably should have, and I'm much more of a numbers guy. I think identifying ends with regard to equity and social emotional learning is extraordinarily difficult. And if I was participating in a discussion about what ends or what evidence did we want to have the superintendent provide that was going to demonstrate ends that were satisfactory, that would be an extraordinarily difficult process. Nevertheless, it seemed like several of the evidence pieces were more about means than they were about ends. So that just left me having to abstain.
All right, thanks for filling us in. Steve.
Yeah, my only point was that we can also make a motion in the middle of this process to amend the monitoring report, or to amend the motion to show non-compliance. That an amendment motion could have been made in the middle of this process.
Yep.
If you felt strongly enough about it, we could have had a vote on whether or not to report non-compliance.
Okay.
I think just from a process perspective, the board can't note non-compliance on a superintendent's monitoring report. I have to say compliant or not compliant. The board can reject the monitoring report.
Right. They cannot
say there's insufficient evidence or the interpretation wasn't appropriate, and direct me to bring a new interpretation, or direct me to bring additional evidence, and can give me some ideas about what that evidence might be. Or the board can change the policy, but the board can't say compliant or not compliant. That's what I have to do, and that's my responsibility on these ones.
Yeah. And Susan Mogensen used to say they're like the ropes you use to move the rudder on the ship. We pull on the policy with the ropes, by changing the wording, making it wider, narrower, whatever, more descriptive. That's where we have the ropes to change what our piece of it. So, all right. Yeah, I'll keep moving along. Next is update on the financial report, and that was included in your packet. Any questions? Dave, is your hand up from before, or is that a new hand?
From before.
Oh, okay. Any questions regarding the financial report? Okay, moving along. Next is an update on the ESSER funds. Oh, wait, now I see some hands. Is this on ESSER funds or on the financial report?
On the financial report.
Financial.
Okay, so Rob, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just trying to pull it up. Thanks again, Floyd. One second here. I thought I had it where I wanted it, and I didn't. I'm trying to get the right page. So I guess it's page 2, Floyd, where it's sort of, you have the highlighted capital carryover for projection in process at 6/30/20. Is there any way, I appreciate this, just because I'm still wrapping my head around just big picture, big numbers, that you could show like a comparative to the year prior at the same month? Does that make sense? Just so it's like, oh, okay, so last year this is what it looked like in the Ed Reserve Fund or the Capital Reserve Fund or the money we had left over. If it's a lot of work, don't worry about it, but it'd just be nice to have a comparison sort of year over year at that same sort of timestamp.
It's certainly something we could add. It might get a little chunky down there with a lot of information. And if it's, you can also pull up previous year's financials for that month and compare it, but it doesn't give you that quick snapshot. I'm happy to present this any way you guys want. It's our attempt to just get as much information in some kind of a clear structure so that you can get a sense of it. And I'll take a look right now and tell you where we were last year.
Well, he's checking. We'll go to see what Dave has to say.
Thank you. So it seems to me, looking this over, Floyd, that we seem to be in pretty good shape. Am I missing something?
No, I think we're where we should be. We've got funds coming into the end of the year that we know we're going to spend, but we should finish with a surplus. We've got some highlights that are going well. Our food services has been better than we expected, partly because the USDA has moved forward with paid lunch for everyone. I think that our revenue is where we projected it. Our expenses are falling in line. So yeah, Dave, I think you're right. It reflects a pretty good budget and pretty good adherence to that.
I appreciate that, and I appreciated the notes at the end. They were helpful and instructive. I was curious why food service was separated out and put separately at the top of the report. And I was also curious if the reason the USDA was moving forward with lunch for everybody was our rate of low-income students.
No, not at all. That's a COVID move.
Okay.
And food service is broken out just in that it needs to be a separate account structure.
Okay.
Rob, to your question, which would you like to compare all of them? Is that what you were thinking?
Me? No,
Nope, Rob, sorry. I was switching back, Dave, sorry.
Okay.
No, I'm sorry, Floyd, I can be a little more specific now that I have it pulled up and I can move my Zoom over here.
Sure.
It is where you have like the fund balance allocation. So it'd be at the bottom of page 2, I believe, if that's page 2. And there's sort of 4 lines. It's like the ed fund, prior year, FY20. I don't know, just some comparative for me.
Sure.
Just year over year. This is my first full year. I'm just curious.
I'm not quite sure which one you're looking at. I think let's start at the top, the general fund summary operating statement. So we're on the same page?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. And then down at the bottom, that highlighted yellow, is that the general vicinity?
Yeah, yes.
Okay, so, and which one of those was, I can go down through them all if you wanted to see them, or I could just send it to you with a comparison or send it to anybody who wants to see it.
it was just a thought for down the road. If you could throw that into the, like I said, if it's a pain in the butt, don't do it. But I'm just curious to see year over year if that fluctuates or how it fluctuates. So
I am at your beck and call. So, if we can present information that helps you guys, that's our goal, is to support this team. So
I mean, I can reach out to you directly, Floyd, at least to start, and then.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Okay. Any more on the financial report? Okay. So let's move to the ESSER funds update.
Sure. And just so these are large sums of money that can grab a lot of attention. So it seems important to keep the board apprised of where the conversations are around utilization of these dollars. We've talked some about them and the fact that they're kind of one-time dollars, and you have to be really careful how to utilize one-time dollars. But I'll kind of talk a little bit about ESSER 1, which we have submitted for approval, and it has been approved, and we've made some amendments to it. But I'll give you a sense of the total dollars in ESSER 1 and the ways in which it's being utilized, and some of the conversations around the total dollars of ESSER 2 and some of the thoughts around how to spend that. And then ESSER 3 is a little further down the road, but trying to make this a fairly regular occurrence just to keep the board apprised of what's going on there. So ESSER 1 was the $317,000 that came to MAUSD. And looking at the way those 317,000 have been allocated, and again, some of these funds have already gone out and paid for things, and others are still in process. But a lot of this going to, and again, a lot of this post-dates back to the beginning of the pandemic. And all of these ESSER dollars can go back to times during the pandemic, and some of them extend beyond sort of post-pandemic recovery kind of work. So in ESSER 1, a lot of this was in support of the work ELP was doing around the childcare, some of the after-school care that they were providing during the pandemic, and now looking into the summer programming and really looking back at last summer's programming as well. Some of our schools have had home-to-school liaisons in the past, which is really a nice. It's a great way to reach out to pre-K partners, to students that aren't in any sort of pre-K, they're in a home environment. And this person acts as that liaison to incoming kindergarten students. So we've expanded that type of support to the schools that haven't historically had those home to school liaisons. A pretty significant amount of money going towards summer learning and supporting students there. Katrina and the ELP team have been working really hard to grow ELP and simultaneously infuse academic and social emotional supports into the ELP environment as a great way to sort of make the most of this captive audience of students that are at our ELP programs for 5 or 6 weeks over the course of the summer. We had a long-term sub for the whole year this year, which enabled us to put a teacher into the virtual elementary school that was so effective in meeting the needs of students that weren't comfortable coming in physically for the elementary schools in particular. We're looking at improving our ability to access, organize, and utilize data to inform decisions. So there's a piece of money here to hire a person to help build some of those systems and help us think beyond pandemic and beyond ESSER dollars to help improve our ability to access the data that is so important in informing our decisions going forward. Then a lot of funds in different ways going to technology. So purchasing of laptops, purchasing of other devices, could be iPad kinds of things that help improve students remaining engaged in a remote environment. A lot of plexiglass purchasing to try and create some barriers during the pandemic, masks, other sorts of kind of sanitation sort of items like that. That really is what made up the $317,000 in ESSER 1. As we're talking about ESSER 2, Some of those things continue, so more expected expenses in the realm of IT, you know, with more students having devices at home, that's more wear and tear, et cetera. So we want to be able to make sure that we can sustain that. We start getting more into some facilities in ESSER 2. So ESSER 2 is $1.3 million. So looking to target some HVAC in some of our schools that have the greater HVAC needs, so using some dollars toward that. So continuing to support the home to school liaisons, looking at supporting students in more of an extended day, extended year kind of environment. Again, just thinking about recovery and wanting to ensure that we have additional time and support for students who need that as we come out of this pandemic. Looking again for ways to help support distancing and things along those lines, which might include outdoor classroom space, outdoor eating space, some improvements to some of thinking some of the bleachers in some of the schools that can help support distancing if there's greater capacity. Looking at audio enhancements for classrooms. So some classrooms have systems where the teacher speaks into a mic and it broadcasts their voice in times when everyone's wearing a mask. That has proven to be really helpful. So we may find ourselves with some masking required next year. So we're looking to ensure that we have some of those supports in place. So some dollars there. Looking at ways that we can utilize special education staffing more flexibly, not unlike what Act 173 is promoting, but Act 173 isn't in place yet. So there are a lot of strings attached to federal funds and eligible special education time versus ineligible time. So looking to allocate a fair bit of funds to create some flexibility so that we don't have some of the hurdles around ensuring that, you know, special education staff are working with a proper percentage of students on IEPs so that their time becomes eligible and so that we get the funds that we expect to get. We can use some ESSER funds perhaps to basically purchase flexibility in how we utilize our staffing to better position ourselves to meet a range of student needs as we emerge from the pandemic. Looking at an addition of a social worker, Mount Abe has a social worker and that position has proved invaluable this year, years past as well, but in particular during the pandemic when families find themselves with different kinds of needs than they may have had historically. So we're looking to grow that kind of support for families, right? So thinking there's certainly a student benefit, but a little bit more holistically getting out into homes and supporting families in ways that they need it. A social worker can do that in ways that other positions in school districts struggle to do. So looking to fund a 1.0 edition of a social worker. And then, you know, these funds can sustain that. We're looking at probably for the next 3 years. And then in that time, we can evaluate the efficacy of positions like that and consider either that position has to go as the funds go away, or we determine that's a tremendously valuable position and we have to find a way to build that into budgets going forward, which, as we know, will be tricky to add positions because that's going to mean another FTE somewhere else would have to be reduced to account for that. But at least we have a few years on the ESSER dollars to see the value that that position may bring. Again, more sanitation, outdoor classroom seating, et cetera, software, looking at some summer curriculum work. Those, believe it or not, that list of items comes up to that $1.3 million. And again, ESSER 2 is more in process right now than ESSER 1. ESSER 1 has been approved already, and we may make some amendments to that. We haven't yet submitted for ESSER 2. The date for submissions is not till November. That's when it has to be in by. We can submit earlier and get approval to start moving some of these projects. There are some hiccups, right? So for any ESSER money to be spent on facilities, we have to get pre-approval from the state before we can go out and seek bids and get final approval for any of those projects. So there's another layer of kind of a hoop to jump through before we can enact any of that. One of the greatest challenges in any positions we're looking to add and in any facilities work is we aren't the only district in Vermont that's getting a lot of money to do these things with. the demand for certain positions and the demand for certain contractors is going to skyrocket. And that's going to make it challenging. Even if we know the project's approved and we have the money and it's all good, we need somebody to actually do the work. And where we land in the hopper of getting people lined up to do the work is going to determine at least when, if not if, that can happen. There's not a great deal of clarity right now, unless Floyd has more, around what if it takes 2 or 3 years to even start a project because of where we fall in line of the work contractors are getting. I don't know what that looks like yet. Anything to add to that, Floyd?
Just, I think you're right on the nose. We're still waiting for guidance on a lot of this stuff on what can and can't qualify for the money. I think it's going to be a pretty tight funnel with a pretty hard pinch point as we go forward across the state, heck, across the whole New England region. It's not like we can go get contractors from New Hampshire, because New Hampshire has the same money coming to their schools to help with their HVAC issues, for example. So it's going to be a challenge to funnel this through and to be able to pick projects that have capacity to be accomplished.
And then just briefly, ESSER 3 is $2.9 million. Right now, the work in ESSER 3 is really sustaining some of the things I've talked about in either ESSER 1 or ESSER 2 or both. So continuing with the social worker, some of the sanitation stuff, data management, et cetera, facilities improvements, that sort of thing. So that's where we are today, at least on ESSER.
Question, Krista.
Yeah, thanks, Patrick. So I was wondering if you could share with us your process as far as figuring out how to use this sum of money, and also if you're aware of how other districts are trying to figure out how to use their monies, what sort of input you're getting across the organization to help inform what you choose to focus on.
So yeah, the process is it's definitely an iterative process. So a number of individual conversations. We meet regularly as a central office team to talk about needs and ways we can support that. And those conversations are influenced by a lot of individual conversations we're having with folks at the building levels. Could include conversations with classroom teachers that are expressing need, building principals, coaches, coordinators, a range of different ideas, but that sort of comes to a head with our central office team. We're also having conversations regionally. Susan, Floyd, Katrina are all in close conversations with their colleagues throughout the Champlain Valley, as I am with superintendents. So there's there's the regional conversations, there are district conversations, there are more local conversations at schools. I encourage building principals this morning in our admin meeting to share ideas as they come up at their local level, as they're talking with teachers and they're seeing needs arise, share thoughts they have on ways we can support that. We have presumably a lot of latitude in how these funds can be spent, and we need to be careful that we're not setting ourselves up for hardship down the road as we try to sort of fix things today. Trying not to make today's solutions tomorrow's problems.
Okay, and then I see Dave and then Kevin.
So exactly how to make today's solutions tomorrow's problems is a really appropriate statement. This one-time money, it's really important to focus on one-time projects or projects that, as you spoke to about the social worker, having an evaluation stage built in, so we figure out whether it's the kind of thing we want to continue after the SR funds go away. Facilities is obviously, capital projects and facilities is obviously the most clear-cut one-time money. So yeah, I liked your report. Thank you much. Keep it up.
Thank you. Kevin?
I'm in hopes, and I'm sure there's a lot of discussion about how to get kids back on track over the next 3 years, if that's how long the funding takes, and also to develop and improve systems along that way of support so that we end up a whole lot better than we are now. And I feel that's a whole lot more important than facilities or capital projects, as much as that stuff is near and dear to me. When you talked about like the ELP program and bolstering those, and I mean, all the descriptions are all made a lot of sense, but I'm concerned about, I'd like to hear your thoughts on students that are going to fall through the gaps, the ones that don't come to those programs, the ones that don't have transportation, not the support at home, or, you know, what have you. There's going to be, I'm assuming, a group of people in that category, and they potentially may be the ones that need the help the most. And then the other thing is with data systems and real-time data and real-time decisions and all that kind of stuff. I'm assuming, and I'd like to, I guess I'm assuming that you're not going to end up with a burdensome system for everybody to keep track of stuff, which is it's kind of a double-edged sword. That's
Goal is the
sometimes with
opposite.
that sort of stuff. So
we currently have a burdensome system. We want to get away from a burdensome system.
Great. But anyway, I'm more concerned. That's more of a comment. It doesn't need discussion. But I'm more concerned about the students that potentially could be falling through the cracks.
Yeah, I can talk some about that, and then Katrina maybe can take it from there, and Susan as well. So we actually had some conversation around that today at our admin team. So we now have a roster of students that are signed up for ELP, and so we know, all right, who can we help serve there? And those rosters either have been or are going to be shared with building principals. So as building principals are identifying need in their building, they can see who's in ELP and is going to get support through that, and who's not, and in what ways can we support them. And building principals are going to be taking some lead in, you know, whether it's seeking out tutoring or somehow connecting with those kids that aren't going to be in ELP getting support. And beyond that, you know, ELP runs for 5 or 6 weeks of the summer, depending on which program they're in or how old the kids are. There are a few other weeks in the summer that that we're aware that there may be some need. So we've started conversations about how might we partner with our local rec clubs, or like what kinds of partnerships can we form, or what kinds of partnerships do we already have that we can enhance to try and help bridge the other weeks of the summer that ELP and these other supports that we're putting in place might not meet. So those are all the kinds of conversations we're having right now to try and figure out how to support everyone who needs support for as much of the summer as we can get them that support for. And Katrina, I don't know if you want to elaborate a little bit. You've been doing a ton of work with the ELP team and trying to get this in place.
ELP planning, you know, we've been doing this now for 13 years. So we are just layering and layering and layering, and we're a pretty well-oiled machine. That leadership is unbelievable. So that planning has been going on for quite a few months, actually. And we actually acquired a grant to expand outside of just the elementary age to include middle school. So we're launching a middle school program that when we got the grant 9 or 10 months ago, we were calling a pilot because I wasn't sure if it was something we would be able to sustain. But due to ESSER, for now anyways, we have been able to double our capacity for that program, and we're very, very excited about launching that. So it's incoming 7th, 8th, and 9th graders will access programming this summer that will be, you know, the ELP philosophy of sneak attack learning. So there's every teacher involved in our program has always been expected to do lesson plans and to connect what they're doing to standards. This year, it's going to be even more connected to literacy in particular. So for our younger students, we're starting very young this year for the first time in the summer with 3-year-olds. So we have 3-year-olds all the way up to incoming 6th graders as part of our regular 6-week program. The middle school program is actually 7 weeks. And that literacy forward focus for the 3-year-olds to incoming 4th graders is going to be very prominent with our teachers, with some training and some expectations for lesson planning. Our 5-6 students are actually going to have what we call during regular school a win block, a what I need block. And we're going to be hiring actual literacy and math interventionists to come and work with them with their personalized learning plan on goals that they set to improve their reading skills, to practice their math, and kind of keep that learning alive, if not recover what maybe has been some learning loss. For the high school program, we're looking at an incoming 10th, 11th, and 12th grade program, not exactly under the ELP umbrella, but everybody's at Mount Abe, so it kind of feels like it's connected to some degree, but that one is going to look a little different. That's going to be a 5-week program, probably just a half a day, where kids are actually trying to recover any learning loss related to their graduation proficiency goals. So that one's still in development, and that one is actually going to be by invitation to start with, and we'll have some of our licensed teachers providing that support. So we really took the approach of looking at our most potentially vulnerable soon-to-be graduates and worked our way down, keeping the support at every level, but really putting it on pretty heavily from 12th grade all the way down to age 3. It's going to be a pretty fantastic program. Right now, enrollment is bigger than 4 of our schools. So it's pretty impressive, and our staff is coming together and training is coming together. It's going to be pretty great. But to Patrick's point, it's not everybody, or to Kevin's point, it's not everybody. So looking at those rosters school by school with principals and school counselors is where we are now, to see where there might be some gaps, and then what funding might we be able to now redeploy to school-based academic tutoring programs where the building itself might be more accessible to families, and it would be free to families. The ELP program, while it's extremely affordable and it does work on a sliding scale for families, and we do have scholarship programs, it still does come with an expense and a commitment. So we're working on sort of this individualized opportunity at the other 5 elementary schools. That is just starting. We knew we set aside the money, but the planning of it, to also to your point, Kevin, that's why you made me laugh so hard. With every one of these ideas comes hours and hours and hours worth of planning, coordination, leadership, and we're not hiring a lot of extra people to do that. So it's falling on the same people who are continuing to do their regular jobs to kind of figure this out. And I'm excited because we've got great people, and I know the program's going to be, all the programs that we offer are going to be amazing. We're also stocking some of the ESSER funds aside because we also know some kids will not want to engage this summer, right? So as much as we make it pretty and sneak attack learning and whatever we do to incentivize it, there's the people will want a break. And so we are trying to put some money aside to help support school year once we get up and running again in the fall. So we have more robust after school programming, some intervention flexibility potentially, especially for the upper grades. So it's a lot, but it's where my focus certainly is. So again, Kevin, to your point, they talk about facilities and I go, I'm just working on my teaching list and all of the things I want to provide our kids educationally, which I know both are important, but we have to make sure that we have that balance. I think that's it. We're using the PLP process also, which is pretty exciting for grades 5, actually all the way up through grade 12, so that there's that connection to school year. So when the kids come back from their summer programs, they will have this evidence and this potentially opportunity to exhibit to their advisors, to their peers, to their teachers, what they worked on over the summer. So we hope to instill in them that enthusiasm for, this was a big investment for me over the summer. This is what I worked on. Here's my project. So from a social emotional learning standpoint, in addition to the academics, I mean, I'm going to invite you all to everything that we do. We've got some culminating theater events. We've got lots of other things, but these exhibitions are also an area of growth for us in ELP that we're pretty excited about as well.
Susan, do you want to talk about how special education kind of dovetails with the ELP program and also the students that aren't in ELP that are in need?
Right. Yeah. So similar to Katrina, we have a really well-oiled machine that we've been operating for many years now, where, I mean, there's the legal side of this, which is in special education, we're obligated to take a look at every student who has an individualized education plan and determine if they meet criteria for extended school year services. And there's really 4 criteria. One is that they demonstrated regression after all breaks in school and didn't recoup in a reasonable amount of time. They didn't meet reasonably set goals. They have a severe disability in which we have a window of time in which to address an issue that they're dealing with at the moment. The last one's around high school kids in particular, around whether or not they need more time to work on transition goals. So those are the 4 criteria. We have, for many years now, embedded our staff with ELP, with the idea that that was one-stop shopping for families, that I can drop off my child in the morning and there's this rich, wonderful expanded learning program that my child's going to be able to take advantage of. And they also have some IEP services that need to be met over the summer. And so our staff are there and they can take them at a time that works for the child to receive those services. I actually just went through our list to see how much overlap there was between ELP and extended school year services, and there's not a lot. So we're going to actually be serving more kids than outside of ELP. And that process really starts in the winter. Right after February break, our staff are going through every student that's being served, looking at those regulations and making a determination about programming. And we have some staff that have been doing this for a while, so they're going to be there being able to provide literacy services, math services, social emotional services, speech. And those services are offered to kids pre-K all the way through high school. So that's what is happening in special education.
Great.
I think all of that gives you a taste of the work involved in trying to understand and then meet student needs. And it is remarkable, to see it in action and to, visit ELP and understand the work that's going. It's really good stuff.
Great. Thank you. Krista and then Dave.
Thank you. It's great to hear about all of this planning and work, and the list of things that you and your team are hoping to tackle is super impressive. I just would say that something that's missing for me is the social and emotional health, particularly of our high schoolers. And as a parent of kids at Mount Abe, I'm not especially worried about their academics right now. I'm really worried about how their mental health is, and I don't think I'm alone. And I'm just wondering what sort of, in addition to taking the pulse of where our kids are academically, what pulse taking is happening for kids who on the surface might seem like they're not going to fall through the cracks, but are really struggling. For the past year, they've been completely isolated from their peers, way more than elementary students. And how they're doing in math and literacy is just, it's the bottom of a list of other things going on for a lot of them. So hearing about an additional social worker sounds great, but knowing the need of so many teenagers, how many therapists don't have room to accommodate a single additional client because there's so much need. I'm just concerned that we're going to have so much focus on some of that other hugely important work, but miss what I see as a glaring need. And I'm just wondering, I guess my question is, how are we identifying those gaps? And then I also just have a comment, which is that, this is all just my own opinion of what we should focus our money on. And I know we all have different opinions of what we should focus our money on, or this relief money on. And I'm just thinking that similar to our facilities planning process, ensuring, I know ESSER 1 is sort of that train's left the station, and ESSER 2 is in process, but ESSER 3 is the largest chunk, and it's not as imminent. And I would really encourage you, Patrick, to find ways to build a process that includes a way to link to our strategic plan that is available for the board to see, that we can get a better handle on how you're planning around that money is going to directly link to all of those different goals in the strategic plan, and how you've invited input from a variety of members of the educational community in a way we really can kind of like is credible. That would give me as a parent more confidence in knowing that you've thought about the thing that's most important to me, and that you have a good reason for why or why not you're pursuing a particular approach. Because I think at the end of the day, you know, really, again, lots of folks know there's money out there. Everybody has their pet project. And we all have different insight into what kids might need. And so let us behind the screen a little bit to see what that process is going to look like. And then also really consider the mental health of our students in what you plan to do with that money.
Dave?
So I was really impressed with the comments that Kevin and Krista just came forward with, and the effort that the district is putting forward and the means that they are using to deal with these are children who are struggling and quote falling through the cracks. How do we measure that? I mean, we've heard a lot about the effort that's going forward and maybe the money that's being spent. But how many kids needed disciplinary action this year versus last year? Or how many kids, I don't know, how do we measure when we're doing a better job or helping our students overcome social and emotional concerns and becoming healthier and overcoming the issues that Krista's talking about? How do we actually measure that? How do we know as a board that we're being more successful? We know we're putting more effort and more money into it, and I applaud that effort. But how do we know we're being successful?
Yeah, it's really through the ends monitoring, right? I mean, that's where we identify the return, I guess, on the investment that we're making. And we have a variety of tools that do measure the social and emotional learning that takes place in that social and emotional health of students, as well as the academics. And we look to those in that ends monitoring process and the ends monitoring report to see what's the efficacy of all this effort, what's that return. And there are both quantitative and some qualitative measures that we've tried to include in that, because it isn't all quantitative, as we talked about. You mentioned you're a numbers guy, Dave. There are numbers, and there are some things that are less numbers oriented and more qualitative that we try to tell the story a little bit as well through those ends. And I think, you know, as we look forward to this summer and the kinds of supports that will be in place over the summer and look to next year, there undoubtedly will be some anecdotal, qualitative pieces of information that are part of telling that story that I think are important to pay attention to.
Okay. Any more ESSER funds questions? Liz?
I guess it just reminds me of that survey that all the students are taking. At least they are required every day when they do the check form, or when they did, it was, you know, how are you feeling about your learning? Do you need any support? And it's a really like ask for help if you need it. So I do think that there are ways. It's just turning it into data that we can look at, that I guess is
Right. So that's the close gap tool that we piloted this year, that different schools do it sometimes daily, sometimes every other day. And school counselors hold on to that information and they respond appropriately. It is not a tool that is so easy to generate bigger picture reports from. That's what happens when you pilot something and get a nice discount, but we have since been looking at a better product that actually we are utilizing ESSER funds to help us support, called Panorama. So we are piloting that this spring. It's something that's better connected to our social emotional learning curriculum and the guidance program that is presented to students pre-K 8. So we're excited about that. It does generate better data sets for us. I might have something preliminary for you, potentially, depends on the turnaround time for the ENDS monitoring report, at least maybe as an incidental to show you what that first screening in September looks like, big picture. But we're excited to try this program, and in meeting with other leaders across the region just today, there are many districts who have never used social emotional learning screeners before, and that is not new to us. We're just trying to find the right tool that better connects to the types of instruction and intervention that we then can respond with when we see a particular type of trend or data set. So it was encouraging to be able to talk to groups from other districts about what we're doing and also hearing what they're doing. So I'm hopeful that we'll have easier ways to show you how kids are either self-reporting or are being evaluated by their closest teachers. But in terms of other data sets that we use, to Dave's point, I mean, we use office discipline referrals, we use nurses visits, we use all of our EST plans, our 504 plan work, our IEP work, all of the CSAT counseling connections that happen for kids. So there is a lot of data. It's just a matter of how to package it for you in a way that responds to the interpretation of the ENDS policy and shows you, to Krista's point, that connection to what we're striving for in the strategic plan.
And Katrina just alluded to a process point that we touched on briefly earlier. So today for an hour, Susan, Katrina, and I were in a regional meeting where all of the superintendents, curriculum leaders, and special ed directors from the Champlain Valley region met together to talk about ideas we have for the recovery planning and where that thinking is around ways in which we can support students. So those are informative, and that's an example of that regional conversation that's again an iterative process.
All right. Before we move down to the board management and governance, we had our two members who were coming in. I just want to give them a chance to say hello. Sarah's, do you want to say hello? Brad's joining us for his official first regular meeting.
Hi, Brad.
And Annie.
Hi, Brad.
All right. All right, our next, under board management and governance, our next item is an action item to accept the monitoring report for 3.3 delegation to the superintendent, and that was included in your packet. Is there a motion to accept it?
I'll make a motion to accept the monitoring report. Sarah LaPearl.
Thank you.
I'll second, Krista.
All right. Thank you. Any discussion? I do have a worksheet from one board member, so I will attach that for the next, so it's in the Google Drive for the next person who writes this report. If we decide to switch at the retreat and pick a new report, you will have this worksheet attached. Okay. Not seeing any discussion or anyone who needs to discuss anything. So based on the information provided, does the board find that the board's interpretation is reasonable? Thumbs up for a yes. 1, 2, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All right, 10. All right, and is there a no? Many no's. Any abstentions? All right. How about, based on the information provided, does the board find that the data demonstrates the accomplishment of this interpretation? Yes. 2, 7, 8, 9. Okay. Any no's? All right. All those in favor of accepting the monitoring report for 3.3 delegation to the superintendent, please say aye.
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 All right.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Sandy, you're abstaining?
Yeah, same here.
Okay, so 2 abstentions. All right. Motion carried. All right. Next item is to accept the monitoring report for 4.5 board members code of conduct.
So moved, Krista.
All right,
I'll second Andrew.
Andrew, thank you. Any discussion? Again, I have a worksheet for that one that will be included. Any discussion? Krista?
Yeah, I was just going to say thanks for the report. And I think, you captured what's been the work of the year and what's been hard about it and how we've navigated it. And I think that's the intent of these reports really, is to kind of, everything. There's not a whole lot to say when things are easy breezy, but they were hard. And I think, I just appreciate the way that you framed what we could work on and what we're doing well.
Thank you. Kevin?
Yeah, there was a certain amount of tough love in it. I guess one thing that was identified a couple different times was self-evaluations and peer evaluations. So I am wondering when the appropriate time, or if there's any interest in discussing how to go forward with those.
Sure, this would be the time to really talk about how to use them. I put them there as a tool. If you all don't think that this is a sort of a plan, then we should be talking about it, and you should direct me to go back and make a new plan. But this is my observation and my attempt at providing a way to improve. Krista?
Is it an either or? So I assume we'd either do a self or a peer. It's the same form, right?
It is the same form. We could choose, to say, I think you mentioned this, like at the retreat, this would be a really great tool to have if we were working in a small group, and to use that with each other and sort of develop a relationship individually with someone as we work through stuff. It could be helpful in that way to use a peer evaluation. In my mind, I thought the self-evaluation could be used, after a tough meeting, if you went back and you look through things, and maybe that would give you some thoughts to, okay, maybe I can improve by working on this next time, or maybe I need to, maybe I'm okay on this, but I'm not on that, or I don't know. Some way to reflect on your own actions.
Yeah, I like the idea of doing something with a partner or couple of other folks at the retreat if we have time allotted to do that, and especially if we paired new and more seasoned folks together, it could be a opportunity to, I don't know, mentoring or whatnot.
Right. Well, without having those in-person meetings, we really have lost that ability to check in with each other ahead of the meeting. Where we used to get, a few of us would get there early, we'd check in and see how everybody was doing, and we're not having that chance because, we come to this meeting and we get going, and so it was just an attempt. Like I said, if you all don't think that that's the path to go down, speak up, and, I can go back and brainstorm some other ideas. Kevin?
I think peer evaluations could be beneficial. I guess one thing I'm thinking about is timing of all this. whether it's done annually, quarterly, semi-annually, or weekly, you know. The importance of a peer evaluation is you all of a sudden get feedback that's not biased from your own perspective, you know. You may think you're doing just great things and there's something that's not obvious to you. So, you know, I'm intrigued with the peer evaluation aspect.
Rob?
Yeah, just with background of as an outdoor educator, I mean, feedback can be huge for growth, both I think as individuals and as a board as a whole, moving forward. Yeah, I agree with Kevin. I think peer feedback can be really powerful. Something that's important to consider with feedback is timeliness too. So if it's a piece of feedback that, you know, 6 months later that someone were to provide to somebody, that time lapse doesn't fit necessarily maybe what that, if it's specific feedback, what that, you know, feedback would be. So yeah, I mean, I think we all have room to grow as individuals and as a board. And, you know, I think sometimes I completely agree with Kevin. Like I welcome feedback, and it's nice when it can be maybe in a formal format, but not necessarily a formal setting also. And that's what's been really hard being on this board for years. I don't have any necessarily personal relationship with anybody because I haven't necessarily met anybody except for at the retreat, which was, you know, at 6 feet at best. So one of these days I look forward to meeting with folks in real life and not in the 2D. But I do think moving forward, especially as we continue to have challenging conversations and approaching really difficult decisions, you know, feedback's really important for us to both grow as board members and individually and as a board. So I haven't had a great chance to read the tool, Dawn, but I think it's a worthy attempt and something we should give a try.
Cool. All right, Kristen?
Yeah, I'm back from an undisclosed location at Mount Abe, but behind a tree. But yeah, I mean, I think it is weird that we haven't been able to meet each other, because some of the best conversations you have are in the hallway or while you're going to, well, walking to the bathroom or whatever. And that's something that we haven't done. But I also don't want being on the board to be like group therapy. So if we could have something in the middle of, you know, that and sort of something that would be helpful at meetings, you know, such as the question I asked the gentleman who came and presented 2 meetings ago. You know, and I think this meeting has been great for not having too many positional discussions and dig-ins and things. I mean, I guess none of the topics have really done that, but just also creating tools in the meetings to keep things moving along and productive. So that would be great too, but I guess that's a different report.
Okay, any other comments? So I'm thinking about the frequency of trying these. I think the individual evaluations can happen every time, anytime kind of thing, but maybe we could schedule the peer evaluations every other month and see how that looks and try it out, and then sort of develop. I'm not quite sure in my head right now how to share that beyond the you know, you and your partner kind of thing, and how we use that as a whole board. But if you're willing to sort of, let's take baby steps and try to get through it, I'm willing to give it a shot and get us in a routine, and then see what we need to do, you know, to use the information we're getting for the board as a whole. Steve?
would it be possible to set up just some kind of a a random pairing of folks? Let's just say you were going to do it on a bi-monthly basis. You'd set up a random pairing of folks, and then it would be between the folks that got paired to just make a phone call and chat with each other for, an hour, and go use the evaluation just as kind of an outline for the discussion. But it doesn't have to be that formal. It can just be kind of a get to know you kind of conversation. And what do you think about what's going on, and how are you reacting to it, kind of thing.
Yeah, I think we can give it a shot. And, if we find, yeah, that's not working, or we could do something different, we can adjust as we go along. I think being open to trying it and seeing what happens is part of the work. Okay. All right. I've jotted down these notes, and I'll work out a schedule and a random pairing, and we'll start going on this. Okay. So based on the information provided in the 4.5 monitoring report, does the board find that the board's interpretation is reasonable? Yes. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All right. And does the data demonstrate the accomplishment of this interpretation? All right. All right. Okay. All right. All those in favor of accepting the monitoring report for 4.5 board members code of conduct, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, great. That one passes. The next is an action item, and it's to consider some new policy language that was developed regarding community engagement policy. So if we find it acceptable, we would approve it for posting, and then it would be posted for, is it 2 weeks, Patrick? That it posts, or 10 days, 2 weeks?
It's 10 days. I think practically it's, we post it until the next meeting when it can be acted on.
Right, and then we would adopt it, and then it would be added to our policy, as 4.8 kind of thing, so.
Right. So typically in 1 month, it's approved for posting, and the next month it's adopted if everyone feels like it's ready to go.
Right. Okay. So we'll need a motion to get started.
So moved, Krista.
Okay. And is there a second?
Second, Andrew.
All right. And then a discussion. Krista, Kevin did make some comments, and I'm not sure if you were copied on that. Did you get copied on Kevin's comments?
I did,
Okay.
and maybe so the version that everyone can see does not have Kevin's comments. So I wonder, Kevin, if maybe since I have the live version here, if I could add in what you're considering, and then everybody could see what it looks like on the live version, if that's helpful. Or you could just, yeah, I'm not sure how you want to do it. I did put in one suggested edit on number 2.
So yeah, you're certainly welcome to put my comments in there if you want. I didn't integrate them into that document because I didn't want to
muck about.
Put it in there without it being agreed upon.
Right.
So I'm not hiding any secrets.
So, and I don't know, John, if we make changes here, then and it wasn't warned prior to making these changes, can we still act on the document with changes we agree upon this
Yes.
evening?
Yes.
Okay.
I believe we can, yes.
Okay, and I'm also recalling that a couple of the changes you had suggested, Kevin, were around changing lowercase b's to capital B's. So I can make those as we're talking. But if you want to share with folks what your comments were, you know, I can note them here, or we can see how it goes.
I think you're still muted, Kevin.
I'm a little confused because it looks like the document that I did make the changes on, you changed.
Yes.
You made
right.
some changes.
Right, and I didn't realize that wasn't the live version. So
Okay.
yeah, so what folks are looking at right now doesn't have any of that back and forth.
Okay, so I had originally in item 2, I had originally highlighted the sentence, the plan will include selection of representatives, owners for dialogue. And my question was if that would be just certain, the selected representatives that this section talks about, or would it be broader than that? And Krista had revised that to say outreach to owners for dialogue, which I'm fine with. I was a little confused how broad that the intent of that would be, was what my question was. And also I was a little confused, and it's probably just my understanding of the words, but it also in item 2, the next part of that talks about methods to be used. I got kind of like nervous about the term methods, which are further defined underneath item A as to how to affect that, but it just seemed to me an odd way to say it, but it works. So I guess I shouldn't be too hung up on that. Does that make sense, Krista?
Yep.
It looks like Steve has his hand up. Steve?
Yeah, I would say under 2A, owner input may be gathered. I don't think owner input can be accomplished, but owner input can be gathered or obtained, or that's just wordsmithing.
Anyone else have comments around the policy language?
So if there isn't any other feedback, John, can we move to approve the policy with these changes?
Yes. So right now we had an action item around this policy. I think we just moved the policy itself. I'm not sure if it's best to amend the language or to just go ahead.
Was there a motion already to approve this policy for posting?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
So can we amend, Krista and Andrew, since you two are the makers of the motion?
Yes.
Would you be friendly with?
Yes.
Adding with board change or with language changes?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. So then the motion would be to approve this policy with the language changes we made or that were made for posting. Okay. Any other questions? All right. Okay, all those in favor of approving the community engagement policy with the language changes for posting, please either give a thumbs up or say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right. Okay, so that passes. The next item is to adopt, I guess, the Community Engagement Committee charge with the changes from suggestions that we received at the last meeting.
Right, so you can see the new version and the changes are in green, and then below it is the previous version. So I move to accept the revised MAUSD Community Engagement Committee charge.
Okay,
I second it. Sandy?
all right, that's Krista and Sandy. Any discussion? Steve?
So, Krista, you were saying that the new statement is just below the title, and changes are in green.
So yeah, I reorganized things a little bit. So everything from that header at the very top of the page all the way down through the end of the green text is the new charge.
So I'm not seeing any green text.
Yeah, I don't either.
Okay. Well, how about
I have pink.
if I highlight everything? This is all. Can you guys see the highlighting?
Yes.
Okay, so that's all the new.
Okay.
And then below it is how it previously read. So it is a little bit reorganized, but and includes some of the language that folks recommended the last time we talked about this, which I can't remember when that was.
So the area that you highlighted in pink in my screen involves one sentence.
Oh golly, really?
Yes.
Does anybody else have that experience? I wonder if I should share my screen.
Yeah, maybe you should.
I think I need.
And this one sentence has a pretty blatant typo in it.
Right.
Oh, is it a bad word?
No, it's just it doesn't make
Okay.
English sense. So you would have trouble if you had
Okay.
waited.
Is that? I think I can share now. Let's see.
Should be able to, yes.
I gotta figure out which screen it is.
I was reading it earlier and I couldn't make any sense of what was going on. So
Oh man, I have so many screens. I don't.
I'm wondering
No.
if you saved a version somewhere else again, like the other one.
There we go.
That's not what you want to see, though. You want to see this.
Now you're sharing your desktop.
I know. Yeah, and I've got two screens going on because I'm using my husband's computer and I don't know how to get that document. So the folks that are on here, you don't see what I see.
Krista, I can try and share my screen. I think I'm seeing what you're seeing.
Great.
Maybe. I'm seeing at least what some other people are seeing.
Okay.
I'll give it a shot and see if it's helpful.
All right.
Well, you might have to blow it up, Patrick.
Okay.
Yes, that's it. Hooray.
Yeah, so I don't know
There
why.
we go.
I don't know why that is there a setting that should be turned on that is showing track changes or something that's not on everybody's screen?
I
don't know.
I think that might be it.
Okay.
I think you have to turn track changes on or comments or something on in order to see this text.
Well, I'm seeing it, so it must be individual settings.
Well, it could be.
Yeah, it could be who I shared it with before. But you can see it now, not as clearly as you might like, though, if it's not on your own screen.
Well,
but in any case,
it certainly makes sense in terms of the typo I thought that was there, because I was only seeing the black text in the in the first sentence. So
let's see.
All right, Kevin, and then Dave.
The third bullet says track participation by different groups. I would like to, I don't know if we can do it friendly or if we need to make a motion, but I would like to modify that to say promote and track participation.
Is everybody good with that?
Yep, I think so. I'm seeing some thumbs up. Okay, Dave, did you have a comment?
So what's the official name of MAUSD? At the top, you have Mount Abraham Unified School District, which is what I thought was the name. But in the first line, it says the Mount Abraham Unified Supervisory District. I think it's just a school district these days. Is that correct?
yes.
Yep.
Thank you.
I can't see if, oh, let me see. Anybody else has their hand up?
I see Kevin's hand up and Brad.
Okay, Brad, I think Kevin's is from before, but maybe not. Brad? Oh, Brad, you're muted. There you go.
Yeah, this is totally minor, and I'm kind of embarrassed to say it, but there should be a hyphen in long term. Sorry.
Oh, yep.
And is underrepresented spelled correctly?
Yes, it is.
That's all. It's 2 R's directly next to each other.
I see Rob's hand up.
Yep, Rob.
Oh, thanks for this question. And this is more of a process question because I'm still new to the board, but how are community members, I guess, chosen to engage as members of the community engagement committee? What's that process look like?
There isn't really a defined process. So when we originally formed, it was with the desire to invite participation from folks in the community that had been really active in the 5-town education forum. And so a lot of those folks came to our initial meetings, and then some of them continued on and are still on the committee today, and others have dropped off. And so really, we talked, I think maybe at this last board meeting, or maybe it was the last community engagement committee meeting, about whether we should formalize that in any way, but that's kind of it would be a little bit of an undertaking. We didn't necessarily want to hold up our work to do that. So right now, I think, anybody's really welcome and encouraged to definitely to attend meetings. And if folks are interested in being actively involved, that's great. I think it would be good to have a manageable working group size and, so that we can get our work done. But other than that, there's really no specific criteria.
I just didn't know if that would fall underneath the charge. I've just, some folks have approached me and I sort of directed them your way. I don't know if they've reached out to you because I didn't know the answer.
Yeah.
Because, we start our meetings with public comment and then like, I appreciate the community members that have stuck with it, and I bring that up also because our last meeting, which I was in and out of, we didn't have a lot of folks and from the community. And
Yeah.
I didn't want it to just be the community of board members, community engagement committee. That's sort of, and so I don't know if there's a way to put in the charge how we think about reaching out to make sure that we're getting people that want to stick with it too, not just show up for one meeting. I don't know if that's part of the charge, but I'm just putting that out there.
I almost feel like when we talked about forming the community engagement committee, we talked about the makeup in that prior work, and that may be where we outlined some of the talk about community members being involved, or there might be some language back in the minutes, or maybe we even explained a sort of ideal makeup we thought of way back. It would have been a long time ago. It would have been back when Jen Stanley was on the board. And
I don't recall. I do know that we didn't want to make it onerous and for folks that, people felt like they had to sign on for a formal commitment as if they were signing on to the board. And I know we also were really deliberate in saying we wanted to provide opportunities to partner with folks in the community, but I don't recall getting much more formal than that, but we might have, and I can look into that.
Okay, and Kevin?
I think, Rob, my intent of changing bullet 3 to promote and track is an effort to get a balanced, as balanced as you can get by involving community members, whether it's they volunteer, you tap on shoulders, or what the process is. But I think it's very important that there's a diverse group in that board makeup from the community, and I think it needs to be the board, the CEC needs to be mindful of how they're promoting and tracking that broad-based input. And however that happens is a detail for the committee. Whoops.
Okay. Steve.
I'm just wondering if this wouldn't be a good spot to pull in some students. It talks about them up in the top.
Yep, and we have had student participation in the past, and I've included that student on our emails for some time now, but they haven't attended, but I think that's a really good point. I also was reminded that we had developed a pretty long list of folks through some of the initial engagement work we'd done. So originally our emails to folks about the committee and inviting people to meetings were really wide sweeping. And then I've sort of culled it down to the folks that have continued to participate as far as the need to know around the work of the committee. But at any point we can broaden that open again, broaden that out again. I think it's an evolving thing, and it's something we always need to be mindful of.
Okay, and Kristen Blanchett, I think I see a hand.
Thank you. Yeah, so I mean, I think we can work really hard to get people to be involved, and people just might not want to be involved or have time to come to meetings that are several hours long. So I mean, maybe I think we always advertise when the meetings are, and so people can come. But again, I think we always hand-wring over people not getting involved, and I think we're really trying, more so certainly than 10 years ago, to get people involved. So, posting, I think posting in the paper will help, although that will be more for an older demographic, probably not students. I mean, maybe we can even put it in the newsletter at Mount Abe or things like that. But it's sitting somewhere for 2 hours is a long time for anybody, and you got to be really into it. And maybe people aren't into doing that every month. They got other things to do. So I don't know. I mean, I think we're trying really hard, and again, we're expanding where we're putting information, so that might help. But yeah, there weren't many non-board members at the last meeting, and we've been advertising it, so it's not like it's our fault. I mean, we're trying. So I think we just need to keep trying, and we'll get varied results at different meetings.
Okay. Not seeing any other. Oh, Rob.
Yeah, I'm not saying we're not trying. That was not my intent of my comment. It's just more of a process.
All right. Okay, I'm not seeing any other hands. So the motion was to accept the Community Engagement Committee charge, the revised. So I think that covers any changes we made tonight as well on the spot. So, Rob, is that a new question or is that the hand from before? Okay. Just didn't want to. All right. So guess we'll vote on accepting the revised Community Engagement Committee charge. All those in favor? Oh, you know what, Patrick, if you can stop screen sharing, then I can see everybody before we vote. It's easier when I can see. There. Excellent. The small group is working great, so I can see everybody. All right, so all those in favor of accepting the revised charge, please give a thumbs up or say aye. 1, 2.
Aye.
6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. All right. And any opposed? All right. Any abstentions? All right. So that passed. The next item is an action item that just requires the board to, if they're willing to say give the go ahead, and is there action item regarding the communication structure and purchasing column space for MAUSD updates and events and happenings in the Addison Independent. And Krista has some more information on that she can share before we take any action.
Yep. And first, I just want to say thanks for the approvals to that, especially to the creation of the policy around community engagement, because then we can really track our work, and that's great. So I'm glad we got that done. So at the last community engagement committee meeting, we were really kind of rebooting and figuring out how to keep going with communicating. Using Front Porch Forum has been great to share overall updates from the board, but especially focusing around the facilities planning process. One committee member had the idea of doing an ad campaign in the Addison Independent, recognizing that Front Porch Forum may not reach all of our constituents, especially some of the older folks in our community, but it also, even if it is reaching those folks as well, just having that additional visibility could really help. So the idea was actually to focus particularly on the facilities planning process in this ad campaign. So it wouldn't be something we would necessarily do all the time, but that it would be a focused effort for 5 months or so. Their subscriber list in our 5 towns is around 800 people, plus they have about 200 newsstand sales in our area. So that's pretty good slice of the population that we would be reaching on this weekly basis. For an eighth of a page, it would be $135 per ad. For a quarter of a page, it would be $270. So for 5 months, we'd be looking at around $2,000, depending on the size of the ads. I think the original idea was if we were sticking with our timeline of making some sort of decision at our August retreat, that we might take out a larger ad as that got closer, or around the time of communities being able to, community members, being able to provide specific input. So, so anyway, around $2,000 is what we would be spending to do this. We use a process similar to what we did with the videos, where there was a subcommittee of folks that worked on content that was then vetted by Patrick and his team and Don, and then it, once approved, it went out. And so it would be content, again, that was specific to the planning process, just letting folks know what's happening. And, you know, last night's meeting with Addison Northwest is a great example of that. So here's some things that are happening. Here's where you can find more information. Here's when our next meeting is, that kind of thing. If we start at the beginning of May, that 5 months, $2,000 timeframe brings us to September. So if we decided we wanted to extend that, we could revisit at that time. But I guess right now I'm hoping the board will approve this concept and this campaign. And then my thinking is that a subcommittee of the Community Engagement Committee would work out the logistics, you know, again, working with Patrick and Don and Patrick's team. And that committee is meeting next Tuesday. So if all were to go well, then, you know, first couple of weeks of May, we'd start this rolling along.
Any questions?
Oh, sorry. One other thing that I wanted to add, you know, we talked about that, that we have Christopher Ross as a reporter, and that's great, but there's a reporting lens that's put on things. And so this is our chance to kind of offer some real, you know, some facts and information without that lens in the paper.
Any thoughts? Rob?
You said, Chris, did you say 800 readers in our 5 towns? So
Yes, that was, you know, 800 subscribers.
households or whatever. Yeah.
Right. People who are actually paying for it. Yeah.
I mean, I'm definitely in support of it. And then I guess another question is, you know, have we ever used or attempted to use something similar, like through Facebook or Google Ads? Just putting it out there. I mean, it's another way to reach people. I know we'll use all our other channels, which are great, but having run a very small Alzheimer's fundraiser and backcountry ski event, we switched from paper to digital, spent less money, and our fundraising and participation has gone through the roof in this area in the past 5 years. And so I know the demographic looks different for that event for what we're trying to do, but just putting it out there.
Yeah, and if I could just, you just reminded me that what we talked about was whatever we put in the paper, we would definitely duplicate in our different social media venues that we already use for sure. But if there are other ways to use those media that we don't know about, you're on the committee, Rob, so maybe you can help us with that.
Kristen?
Yeah, I put everything onto the Moncton Facebook page, and that's almost 800 people also. And I think I get more people talking back to me there. And I do Front Porch Forum and the Moncton Facebook page. I put the same thing on. And so we're covering a lot of people. I mean, and it might be different demographics too, or at least, you know, there's a Venn diagram in there somewhere, but I'm sure it's different people. So we're hitting a lot of people in Moncton with every communication.
Anyone else? Okay, so are you in support of this idea, or anybody going to make a motion?
I move to pursue an ad campaign with the Addison Independent that will be organized by the Community Engagement Committee.
I'll second Andrew.
All right. Okay, any other comments?
Is calling it an ad the wrong thing though? It's informational. An ad is that we're not supposed to sell anything ever, right? So should we call it a different thing? I mean, we're not supposed to campaign for anything. We're just supposed to be putting out information. So could we call it an article? Or, I mean, an ad makes me nervous calling it an ad.
Well, we have it listed as column space. I mean,
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
Can I amend the motion to
sure.
whatever friendly way we do
Let's see.
what she said? I make a motion to approve the
column space
in the Addison Independent.
Yep. Pursue the column space in the Addison Independent. All right. I'm not seeing anybody dying to add any comments. So all those in favor of pursuing column space in the Addison Independent, give a thumbs up or please say aye. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Anyone opposed? 11. 11 to not any abstentions. All right, 11 in favor. I think there might have been 12 in favor now that I'm thinking about it. We're all here. Okay, so the motion carries. All right. Next is an update around the Community Engagement Committee. Krista?
Yeah, so besides the ad campaign, we focused on thinking about the proposal process and ways that we might involve the community in that process. And we had some preliminary conversations about what a mixed group team would look like. And I think the group overall was in favor of that approach versus just the board evaluating proposals. And some folks also expressed interest in getting input specifically from staff and principals. And we had some interest in, which also was raised with this group, in exploring the collective interest bargaining process. Obviously, since that time, we met with Nate Levinson, and so a lot of those ideas, I think, are folded into or complementary to what he shared with us. So I'm imagining that when we get back together as a community engagement committee, you know, we'll reflect on that and just sort of be poised to assist in the connecting with community as we as a board figure out what our process is going to look like. And I think Patrick, you and Don maybe have more information to share specifically around the CIB work. So
yep,
that's it. Our next meeting is May 4th, and anyone who's interested is welcome to join us.
And the meeting minutes for the community engagement meeting are going to be attached to the minutes of this meeting. Is that correct, Krista?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Okay. I don't see any questions, so I'll move. Dave, I'm not sure if you have any legislative update to share with us.
Just briefly, you may have already seen it hit the news that the State Board of Education has required 3 school districts to pay tuition to Rice Memorial High School as a Catholic school. And that's sort of the state board's reaction to the U.S. Supreme Court decision with regard to tuitioning to religious schools. There's some question whether that was appropriate action on the part of the State Board of Education, but that's the way it sits at the moment. There is also a suit in the Vermont Supreme Court that is saying, it's very broad, and it says that because in the state constitution, the state is the one that's responsible for the education of the children, not the towns or the school districts or the counties. But in fact, the state is responsible for the education of its youth. And because of that phrase, that's what resulted in the Act 60 decision and the dramatic change in school funding. And now it's the argument is that if one town tuitions students, if the state allows one town to tuition students to private schools or religious schools, then all students have to be eligible for that voucher. So should that succeed, that could be quite devastating to public education in the state of Vermont. I'm personally very concerned. And that's being argued at the Vermont Supreme Court at the moment. That's really all I have. And you know, the legislation is moving relatively rapidly. I continue to work on measuring poverty for the purposes of pupil counts, student weighting, it's referred to. That's being put into a study committee. So there won't be any action this year. So one of the modeling done by the Joint Fiscal Office at the legislature shows our district with 11.7% poverty, yet we have between in the neighborhood of 35% of our students are eligible for free and reduced price lunch. So that's a really big divergence between the two numbers. So I'm trying to work to get a more accurate number of our students that that are going to be counted as low-income students in the weighting law that will move forward probably next year. So that's what I have.
All right. Any questions for Dave?
Is there any movement on the construction, including construction in the spending threshold?
Yes, you know, that it all depends on the end game. Right now, it looks like it's in there that that will be not counted as a part of the high spending threshold because bonding is not counted. So budgeted construction may also not be counted. But that's really tenuous. You know, that could be there, it could not be there in the end game. It wouldn't hurt to let your legislators know that you're concerned about that.
Last I knew, that was being folded into the yield bill. Is it still tucked in there?
Which bill?
The yield bill?
Yeah, that's where it would be.
Kristen? Nope, you're muted.
Sorry about that. I read something, Dave, about possibly in the possible infrastructure bill, which the president is working on, something about buses, natural gas or electric buses, some sort of program about that. And since our buses do so much driving around, if you could keep, I mean, we can all keep an ear out for that, for buses that have less of a carbon footprint.
Yeah, well, the state has already moved forward and CCT, the Chittenden County transportation buses are electric. They have some electric buses on the road. So yeah, there's movement, but who knows what the federal government's going to do. If you do, please let me know.
Great. Okay. Next item is a discussion item around the book, 6 Shifts to Improve Special Education and Other Interventions. Patrick, I think we'll need to get Brad a copy of that because I don't think he has a copy. So we'll need to get a copy. And the reason that we added it. Whoops. Go ahead, Brad.
I have a copy.
You have a copy? Okay, great. Just to let members know that we'd like to have everyone complete it by July in hopes that for our August retreat, we can use it as a springboard for some conversation around our ends and develop some key questions that we can have a meaningful conversation at the retreat around that book. So if everybody can work to, you know, get through it by July and be prepared for the August retreat, some discussion, that would be great. Okay. Dave?
Yeah, thank you. So it was Nate Levinson and his work that that our committee wrote the special education bill that became H 173, I think is the number. No, Act 173. At any rate, I find his work exceptional, and it will be. I hear that our district is moving in the direction of doing as much as we can along those lines. But as Patrick referred to earlier, the constraints around current special education funding are onerous, would be the word I'd use, and make it really difficult for our schools to deliver special education needs to really young students. Pre-K through 3 is my biggest focus, who are not really special ed kids, and aren't yet qualified to have a label attached to them, but rather need the supports that that schools and families and others really need to give these kids in order for them to be successful. So yeah, I think it's an exciting book. I look forward to the conversation.
And just to play on that a little bit, in a great system and a really strong system, you shouldn't need a label to get the help you need. So that's something that's exciting as we think about thinking differently about how we support any student who struggles and doing so more flexibly. It's exciting. It's the direction we're going. It's slow and it is onerous at times, but it's promising that we're moving in the right direction.
Yeah, and it's exciting that some of the ESSER funds may be helpful in that regard. Yeah, I found, I was teaching automotive technology at 11th grade to kids who couldn't spell and had and couldn't do math and had a label attached to them, and it didn't help them in their social interactions at 11th grade to be labeled special ed, and so I think the more we can avoid the labels and deliver the services, the better off these kids are when they reach higher grades.
Great. All right. Okay, let's keep moving along. The next item is a discussion item around the board retreat. We've been, Patrick and Krista and I met to go over a couple of different agendas coming up, and we got on the topic of the board retreat, and initially our thoughts went to some of the offerings that the Vermont School Board Association is offering, and tagging on and using some of that information, specifically maximizing the partnership, embracing data and student voice. And then some other topics we were considering: visioning future forward board focus, the book discussion as we talked about, and then the facilities discussion as part of our retreat. So Patrick's looking into checking with the VSBA about some offerings that they can, whether they could attend. We do have that date set for the 16th. I think I heard back from just about everybody that day would work. So mark that on your calendar, and then we'll continue developing the plan for the agenda over the next couple months. Kevin.
So we're going to talk about it in a little bit, facilities timeline. You had mentioned the facilities issue could be a discussion. I would think that, to do it justice, could be a very lengthy discussion, or I'm just trying to figure out, I'm sure you're thinking about freewheeling right now, what's going to happen and what the options are and whatnot. But I think some of these things, discussion events and Nate's book, and then the facility thing could take a major chunk of the time.
Right. Well, we do have some obligations from the state for education, so that there is some board education that we need to do together to fulfill those obligations. So it's a balance. And I think when we were having the initial discussion about the retreat and there was a realization that it is entirely possible that we get to the August retreat and we're not ready to make a decision, kind of thing. So how do we continue to work? And some of this is like, we need to hear more about the support Nate can offer and how, you know, his thoughts on our process that we're sort of laying out. So Krista, do you want to add more from that conversation?
Well, I was just thinking about how, you know, we definitely do not want to short shrift the facilities conversation, but I've also seen over the years how we have a hard time really dedicating a lot of time to the overall board education. And so I feel pretty confident that if we, you know, in the same way that we've added in extra meetings to do more facilities conversations, that we will do what we need to do to make sure we have enough time to talk through that and to try to hold sacred the retreat for some of the stuff that I think it just helps us keep that foundation strong so we can do the hard work.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right. Okay, so like I said, we're probably going to revisit the board retreat topics and as we work through things and go through our planning. The next item is the discussion around the use of critical issues bargaining process for the facilities process. That was brought up in a few times in conversation here at our board meetings, and it was brought up at the community engagement committee meeting. So Patrick and I reached out to Annie about the federal mediator about whether that process could work for the facilities issues we were planning. And after much conversation, Annie pretty much came out and said that the process is really designed for labor negotiations. It really isn't suited for a discussion like this with a community, because when you're having a labor discussion and using that process, you all know that you're coming out at the end with a collective bargaining agreement, and you all come to these agreements together. And the process and what we're going to have to is come out with at the end is really going to be sort of adopted by a majority of the community members. It's not going to be a collaboration that we all agree on necessarily in the end. So she didn't really think that the process would work with the volume of people and what we're trying to do. So we just wanted to get back in touch and let the board know this. We're going to share it with the community engagement committee next week and let them know, because they asked about it as well. So this was just to let you know that we did reach out, and that was Annie's opinion about using that process. I don't know if I missed anything, Patrick, if there's anything that okay. All right. Next item is a discussion item around the facilities timeline. Just a chance to look at that, and like we said a little earlier, that may change as we learn more about Nate and if he can support us or his insight into what we've outlined so far. Just put it up there in case anybody, I put it out there in case anybody had something they wanted to share or concern or another thought.
This isn't a timeline that's changed, Don. It's just, you just want to open it up for discussion again.
Right. I just want it to be there so that we're looking at it, and it's, you know, if somebody comes up with a thought that, you know, we haven't just said that's a timeline and we're not talking about it anymore.
Right. Does somebody have that up we could look at again?
I'm not very good at screen sharing. I should screen share. Are you able to, Patrick?
I'm looking for it. I'll try to get it and pull it up.
Well, I don't mean to put anybody on the spot here. I just thought if we were going to actually discuss it, it might be helpful to have it up in front of us.
Is it really more, Don, that it's a work in progress at this point? I mean, we have this outline, but I think we all recognize that there's so much, actually I think good information that we're getting. And I imagine the next discussion item, support from Nate Levinson, will help inform us on that too.
Yes. You're right about that. Yes.
Okay.
And is the next step on that timeline is May 4th?
Yes, that is.
That's the deadline for getting the proposals?
Yes.
That's still in place, right, Don?
Yes, still in play. Yep. Kevin.
Well, my question was about the proposals, I guess. If this is an appropriate time, if there's been any activity or what the process or progress on those, if it makes sense and this is the right time to maybe get a brief highlight of any interim activity.
So I have not heard anything from any of the other groups. I know they've requested some information at the end of that workshop meeting to help prepare for their proposals. I did receive a message from someone asking what format we wanted and when, and I responded that we hadn't really set a format. It should be written, and then the board will evaluate and determine if they want further information kind of from what we see in the written piece. But other than that, I haven't heard much from other groups. Krista, do you have any? Or is it a question? Go ahead, Krista.
No, I don't have anything on that. It was more of a comment about the timeline. I think it's hard because, kind of pandemic style, we're building it as we go. And so we don't really know how this new process is going to take, how long it's going to take. But I think that if we, as we figure out, maybe with Nate's help, a little more clarity what we're headed toward, it's going to be helpful for people to know. Right now, I think, the community has in their mind that something's happening in August. And so, as soon as we have a sense of that not happening, it would be good to just at least state that in some way. Because it helps with communication, so folks know what to be paying attention for. So I guess we're sort of balancing being able to inform people and also, again, building as we go. So it's challenging.
Thank you. Rob.
I guess my question in regards to our timeline, and I haven't looked at it in a little while, so I apologize, but in thinking about our meeting last night, we'll have this third party, the merger study committee moving forward, and their timeline doesn't necessarily align with our timeline to make a decision. So if what we put forward as a board is to merge, and then this group comes back and say, we don't recommend that, I'm just trying to set us up for success, and that those two timelines aren't on the same track per se. And I think we should be very thoughtful about that as we move forward with our work here, at least big picture wise.
You made me remember what Nate said about using if this, then that, and if this, maybe, sort of levels. And I wonder if that would Nate support, if that's what we might come to. Well, if this, then we'll do this. And if this happens, then we'll do that. Or I wonder if it'll end up something like that. Kevin.
Hopefully this will be a little comforting, but I don't see the two activities contingent on each other. I see them as two independent activities. So you could You could come up with a elementary school solution or come up with a high school solution, and they're independent.
That learning as we go and building as we go. I think we.
And maybe it's telling, I found more than one document that shows the timeline, and they're different timelines. I think that's, when I think about what prompted this agenda item, it was following Nate's presentation and realizing the process that lays before us probably extends beyond the reasonable expectation that a decision by this board at the August retreat probably just isn't practical. I think to Krista's point, there are a number of people who feel like that is the decision making point. And if there's agreement on this board that that isn't practical based on what you know now, to communicate that out would be helpful. Helpful in a couple of ways, because people can adjust their own thinking. I think helpful to realize, once again, the board is looking at taking whatever time is necessary to do the process right. So thinking about head and heart. An extension could speak to the heart, which I think is important. And I also think, in retrospect, it's an open meeting, but there's a bit of a sort of sanctity of a board retreat and the opportunity for the board to do its work and dig deep into some of that work without inviting a lot of community interest in that. By announcing a decision at an August retreat, you're inviting lots and lots and lots of community to come and be a part of that retreat, which impacts the retreat feel and atmosphere to some extent. In particular, if we're in person at a location and we announce something that may draw many, many, many people, that creates something we have to think through and plan for. So for a lot of reasons, I think it's an important conversation to have, even if it's only specifically about the August retreat and what will or won't happen there around facilities, knowing that there's a lot of uncertainty about other aspects of the timeline.
So are we actively thinking about changing the timeline to incorporate some of what Nate was talking about?
I think we probably need to hear an update from Patrick about the support that Nate can offer before we make any changes to the timeline. I think we can revisit the timeline on our next agenda or at the facilities planning, the facilities meeting, look again at it, given that, but I guess this is a time to plant the seed that, thinking about that August retreat, that might not be the best time to be making a decision in our process. So
some of that does stem, I think, from Nate's presentation. If this board thinks that a process that has I forget exactly the term, that the evaluation kind of committee that Nate was referring to, the likelihood of creating that, giving them the resources they need and the time they need to fully vet the options that are brought before them, to have that done and to have that information submitted to this board so that it can weigh it ahead of an August retreat date and make a decision, that feels tricky to me. And that's where thinking about what process does the board want to follow, what role might Nate play, could potentially significantly impact what timeline needs to be followed to accomplish that process. Do you want me to jump into the Nate update, Dawn?
I think that makes sense. And then just know that we'll put the timeline on the facilities meeting next month and hopefully be able to look at it and adjust, and then let communities know if we decide to adjust. So Patrick, go ahead with yours.
So following Nate's presentation and the discussion the board had and the interest the board expressed in working with Nate going forward, I reached out that night to Nate saying, great job, thank you. The board's very interested in working with you. and that the board would be thinking about in what ways do they want to work with him, but also asked him for some ideas about what he thought would be a good role for him to play. He wrote back and is very interested in working with us and is willing to work with us. His initial thoughts were for him to play a little bit more of a behind the scenes role. And some of his justification that he has shared in the past is that because he has spent a fair bit of time in Vermont, I think he appreciates the Vermont context pretty well, pretty accurately. And he has a concern about how communities will respond if, as he puts it, the suits from Boston are out in front of this and the way that we typically react to that in Vermont. I think that's what prompted his interest in being a little more behind the scenes. Having said that, when I reached back out, just inquiring, like if the board's interested in a more active role, is that off the table? Are you open to that? He was open to that. But that's where we stand. I have a meeting scheduled to talk a little bit more with Nate on Monday. So I can share the conversation that this board has tonight with Nate. So we can try to get something kind of pinned down and get an agreement together and really get something official in place so that we can begin working with him and we can get whatever process we're going to engage in started in the near future.
Andy?
Thanks, Don. You know, my first instinct would be not to be behind the scenes, just because, you know, first of all, I was impressed by, you know, what Nate had to say, and it took me a while to listen to everything from our last meeting and to really hear where he's coming from. And I think it's important that he be actively involved and that community members can sort of see what's happening, because I think just by listening, learning, watching, they themselves can decide, you know, to trust in the process versus, you know, if we have him sort of as a consultant, but he's not out there as well, I think that it'll only foster the sense that we're not being transparent. And I don't think that's our goal at all. I don't think anybody thinks it's, you know, I know at least on the board that we're trying to do. So that's just my 2 cents. I would like for him to be more actively involved if that could be managed.
Rob?
Just curious, like the price tag, would ballpark, I guess, does it look different in forward facing or behind the scenes?
We haven't gotten into that level of detail. That may be something we can dig a little deeper in our conversation on Monday. I think regardless, the price tag is going to be high. I don't want to pretend that it won't be. The caliber Nate brings doesn't come cheap. I think to work into your mind a price tag of in the ballpark of $50,000 is probably reasonable. And to put it in context, that 2-hour session we had was $3,000. So it's not unreasonable to think 50,000 is where we may land for a more involved body of work with Nate. And at the end of the day, you know, the size of the decision we're making, 50,000, I routinely get sticker shock. Floyd can attest to this. Even when I'm prepared for a big number, I get surprised by an even bigger number. When I think about the scale of decision that we're working to make, if we spend $50,000 on the best consultant we can get to do that work, that could be the best $50,000 we've spent to make this generational decision. So I would encourage the board to think of it that way as well. This is an investment in doing the best we can to make the best decision we can for our long-range planning.
Steve?
Well, so just in going back and talking about the timeline, my sense is the very first thing I would be asking Nate to do is to take a look at what process we've been through and what we've outlined for the process and give us his opinion on that. And what if he was to design the process from here forward, what would it look like?
Okay. Liz.
Yeah, I appreciated Nate. I appreciate a lot. I would say that though I think I would assume that everyone in our communities is open-minded enough to get some good information and make a good decision. But I feel what I've read so far of the book, the idea that the direction we're moving in could have profoundly advance the outcomes of our students, like in a way that in a shift that he's made and done before, and he has proven evidence that had done something in different settings, and this is how it turned out and for the kids. And to have his lens really looking at our plans and really saying, well, you know, helping us evaluate the options, and this option could get us here, and just the effect that the choices that we're looking at them and saying, how will it affect outcomes for students, and the background that he has that could really give a depth that I think that we need to share with our community would be just worth the effort that we go through with working with him.
Kevin.
Well, to start with, I think 50,000 sounds low. but I think there is of the people that are talking about this issue out in the community, which is a group, they are looking so hard at an independent, quote unquote, independent analysis of what we're doing. So, you know, if he makes a decision that they don't agree with, then he may very well be the suits from Boston. But I think there's a lot of people that are open to having somebody actively involved as a third party, if you will. So that might work or could work. I would, and kind of like Liz was talking about, we're looking at improving outcomes for kids. We're looking at social emotional opportunities. We're looking at aligning our schools to better utilize or to be better utilized for all this stuff. And you know, I'm not so sure the consultancy for that, you know, you may be already thinking about this, but I don't know if there's ESSER funds or some ESSER angle there. And I would use him to the highest level we possibly could for that. And matter of fact, I would pitch to use him at the highest level we could through the recovery of over the next 3 years to really solidify some of the concepts that he's worked with. And, you know, of course, it's his book, but I mean, there seems to be, you know, evidence, if you will, that there are successful strategies and stuff. So I'm totally for using him to the nth degree that we can, both not only for the facilities project, but for the recovery phase post-COVID.
Sandy and then Krista.
So again, like I said before, I definitely was impressed by Nate's participation in the last meeting that we had with him. You know, but in the same breath, there's this other part of me that, you know, I have also, like Kevin, heard people's concerns, which I think are valid. You know, should we be putting all our eggs in one basket? Have we really researched, you know, other school consultants who may do other really great work? Have we looked for requests for proposals? Not that I want to go backwards. I'm not necessarily saying that I want to take steps backward, but I don't know if did we do some kind of process when we decided, what direction we were going. And again, I'm not criticizing Nate, but I can also see that there are probably a lot of skilled consultants and professionals who've advised, under these same circumstances. So I wanted to put that out there.
Krista.
Yeah, I guess I'd like to know more about what an in front versus behind the scenes role would look like, because I am worried that if we pin all of this work on any one person, regardless of who it is, it's going to fail. For Nate to help us build a really rigorous process sounds awesome. For Nate to be in front of that process sounds like it would be suspect. Whether that's right or wrong is kind of not the point. I think what many people are looking for is something we grapple with together. And so I would just want to be really careful about, seeing a consultant as a savior who's going to figure it all out for us. And I say that because I know, working with Sue McCormick, that I've often looked to her to help save me in figuring out how to engage with the community. And I just don't want us to just keep making the same mistake. And I think, that it's, that could easily happen. So I'm really interested in knowing more the ways in which Nate is typically useful in this sort of situation. And then we can kind of pick from those options. It's hard to really know without more specifics what would be most useful. And I liked a lot of the ideas he said, and I liked his thinking behind specific processes. So I'm not, I'm totally in support of us working with him. I just don't want to see us give too much power to that role.
Kristen Blanchett.
So I have to say that I am confused about what we're doing, because we've been, I think we're gathering information and be doing it for a long time, and we're going to do it until we get these proposals and gather more information. And then, but I think the problem is we don't all agree on what the problem is. Right? I think that's still part of the problem, is that we haven't defined the problem, or everyone's defined the problem in their own way. And then we have to synthesize the information we get and process it and make a decision at some point. So I just wanted to check back with you, Patrick. Do you see that we have a deadline to make some kind of decision? Is there a date, like for monetary reasons, or is there not to put you on the spot, but do we still have a deadline? Because we can gather information for 20 years, and I don't know if that, we at some point have to stop, no matter who's helping us with anything.
The reality is it's not as discrete as is there a sort of a hard deadline. It's each year that passes without a long range plan, we're having to make hard decisions to meet financial targets in the absence of knowing, of trying to work towards something. Nate mentioned in his presentation what a district can accomplish through attrition when it knows where it's going. We can do a lot of work and get quite a ways down the road in meeting the financial targets that we're going to have with minimal riffing, which is so detrimental to an organization, if we know where we're going. In the absence of knowing where we're going, it's really challenging, as we're experiencing this spring, to take advantage of attrition. Most of those positions that you approved the resignations of tonight, we're filling. In part because we don't have the financial constraint next year to reduce them. And in part because we don't know what the year after is going to bring for us, because we don't have a plan to work toward. we might have been able to not fill some of those positions if we knew ultimately where we're going with this planning process. So that's the urgency, is each year that passes, and really each budget building season that passes without a plan is a missed opportunity and a hardship we're going to have to work through with kind of some blinders on, because we don't know what the long range looks like.
So I feel like, and I have no answer for it, but I feel like what we're doing right now is ineffective, because I feel like we're spinning our wheels, and maybe that's really negative, but I'm like, wow, we're still at the same point we were 6. So I don't know. That's how I feel about the process right now.
Okay, Rob?
Just to sort of go back to what Krista was saying, yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I guess, we as a board and our communities have to own whatever decision is made regarding facilities use. And what stuck with me with Nate was his emphasis on the process. The districts that did it most successfully didn't necessarily have the smarter proposal per se, or the smarter solution. They had the smarter process. And so in regards to whether Nate's behind the scenes or in front, I think that's a question to ask him. Like, so the districts that had the smarter process, where were you? Were you out front or were you behind? But even if he is out front, I think it's really important that we own this, and we make sure that our communities also feel like they own the decision that is made, knowing that it's made for the betterment of all of our students in our 5 towns. So that's a question I would ask him up front before maybe we make a decision.
Okay, and Sandy?
What Rob said, I would agree. Krista, thanks for the reminder of the process part about what Nate was about, because that was one of the more compelling things that he said. It was really about, we're the ones that are going to have to do the work, but you think to help us with a process that really includes the community. And I know I haven't been on the board for the last couple of years. Well, I know there's been a ton of work with regard to facilities, but there's no doubt that I think people mentioned it before, Patrick, you put the gauntlet down. We have to really look carefully, and I think we have a great deal of community engagement. I think that might be, we can really capitalize that and keep going through this process now that more people are really involved. And I think we can ride that and hopefully arrive at a point where, we as a board can make a decision for the whole community.
And Krista?
I was just wondering if we could have this, ask some of these questions of Nate. I think we talked about that early on, that it turned into a workshop, which was incredibly helpful to hear how he, his thinking. But I think we talked early on about the board really being, we're hiring him and working with him. And can we ask him directly, how can you work with us? Is that not ineffective or appropriate?
I think it could be effective and appropriate. There are a couple of ways to go about that. A subgroup of this board could, so I have a meeting scheduled with him. So we're already in his calendar, at least I am. We could see if some members are available at that time and kind of slide into that conversation then. Or we look to find a time at a future board meeting where the whole board can engage in conversation with him, and we bring him in for that broader conversation with the board, acknowledging that there's a cost associated with that, I'm sure. And maybe it's worth it.
Anyone else who hasn't had a chance to speak? There are a few. Oh, Dave. Oh, you're muted.
Did that, all right. Did that work?
Yeah.
So I think I sympathize with people who don't know where we're at. I feel a little bit of that myself, because I came on the board when we were halfway through this process, or a third of the way, or 90%, depending on how you want to look at it. One of the real struggles that I think we all as an individuals have to answer for ourselves is, are we ready to take ownership of this? I think one of the problems, and I mentioned this last night, I think one of the reasons that we have had the kind of pushback from the community, and no doubt, you know, a lot of it has to do with people wanting to preserve their community schools. But it was also because the board was not perceived as a board decision. It was perceived as an administration decision. And so people were not happy with their representation. They were not happy with the people on the board unless they were from their community, and not being able to see the bigger picture. So I think we all have to, you know, come to a point where we're ready to take ownership for the actions of the board. And I propose this as a finance committee, didn't get any support on the board for that notion. There's certainly other ways for us to present ourselves to the community, and a lot will depend on how this column works out in the Independent and the new efforts of the community engagement committee. But I think that's a key thing. And so I think the point is well taken in terms of some or all board members meeting with Nate and trying to figure out how we're going to work this out. What is the process that he alludes to that is a good process, and does that work for us? And then as a board, move forward with those decisions.
Sandy, is your hand up from before, or is that a new hand? Okay, Steve Rooney.
Yeah, so I'm just circling back to the comment I made earlier, which was all about process, all about the timeline. And I think one of the things he could do, you know, in front or behind the scenes fairly easily, is to give us an analysis of where we've been and where he thinks we could go and how long he thinks it would reasonably take to get there. And with that analysis, he could probably give us a couple of options of how he would be involved going down the road. My sense is we just need a guidance counselor. That we don't necessarily need somebody waving the baton at the front of the crowd. We just need somebody to give us some feedback and keep us on the straight and narrow.
What was coming to mind for me as I was listening to everyone speak about the kind of support that could be useful is sort of twofold. I think there are different needs, right? From the board support, I was thinking about Nate as a coach, process coach for the board, sort of at the board side, supporting that work going forward, not out in front doing it for the board, and not so behind the scenes that nobody knows he exists, but he's there coaching along the way, providing that kind of support, which I think is what I think you were saying as well, Steve. I think something different, and somebody mentioned this earlier, the need for the independent evaluation of proposals is a different kind of support that I think Nate and his team can bring. And I see that, assuming we move with the process that Nate was recommending and have this sort of proposals evaluation committee, he could support that committee in that way, in that he takes the proposals in their various formats, vets them, maybe brings that sort of vetted information in similar formats for the different proposals back to that committee and helps them do the evaluation they need to do to recommend something or advance some information to the full board. That's kind of where my mind was going as I was listening to all of you speak. And I can certainly represent that, or others can bring this to the meeting. It's 11:30 to 12 on Monday is what we're scheduled to meet with Nate, or we can bring him back to the board and have that fuller conversation. But that's kind of what I felt like I was hearing.
Yeah, I almost feel like it might be productive for you to keep that meeting, Patrick, and then have time for the board. My experience with all of you is that you need that time to ask those questions and to hear each other and hear the answers in order to move forward. So I'm wondering if that could be an option, if he could devote, we could set a time limit and, you know, use that time wisely to have a chance for the board to ask their questions.
Does 1 hour seem like a reasonable time? I'm happy to do that. And part of our conversation can be, let's find a time when you can join the board at one of their regular meetings and give it an hour for this conversation. Does that feel like a reasonable amount of time? Not to shortchange it, but to be efficient?
Yeah, I think we have to come prepared with our questions and, you know, not spend a lot of time looking back and get our answers and keep moving along. Brad?
Yeah, I mean, we've spent an hour just talking about this informally here. I'm not sure that, you know, if we set an hour limit with a conversation with Levinson would necessarily do justice to what we're trying to accomplish. I think an hour might be too little.
Okay. Kristen?
I think that if we had questions ahead of time that we gave him, it might be able to be done. Again, every time we do a step in this process, it takes quite a bit longer than we thought it would. And how can we make things more efficient so that we can actually, you know, answer things and move on in the process. So if we had questions ready and, you know, we left 10 minutes at the end for him. I mean, this is how other meetings I go to work. They're not endless. We wouldn't still be here at 9. I mean, I think we need to talk things through, but we also need something in our meetings to help them be more brief. So if he came, we had pre-questions done that we could all look at and say, yeah, let's ask those 5 questions. And I'm sure he seemed to be very efficient in his presentation and answering questions. So that's just a thought that maybe an hour would work if we used that format.
Okay.
Well, maybe if we provided questions to him in advance, that might work.
Right. That's what I said, is if we came up with questions, gave them to him in advance, and then we might all have, you know, if we left a certain amount of time at the end for follow-ups or something.
Mm-hmm.
And for what it's worth, for the last time that Nate came, you know, we had the agreement for the 2-hour workshop, and I let him know, you know, if the board's needs exceeded that 2 hours, we'll work out whatever we need to sort of financially to compensate him for his additional time. He said he was happy to stay as long as he needed to, and there wasn't an additional charge. I could do something similar here, set up whether it's an hour or 90 minutes or whatever seems reasonable, and let him know if the conversation needs more time, let's not cut it off. If he can, stick it out, and we'll make it right however we need to on the other end to make sure that everybody feels like they were treated fairly.
Mm-hmm. Steve?
I think to this point, though, we could all give Patrick questions between now and the meeting. And Patrick could have a good sense of what we're looking for. And Nate could give us a preliminary response before our next meeting. And we could digest that and essentially have quite a bit of the conversation done before we even talk with him in person.
Yes.
And just to reiterate, I did pose the question to Nate, what do you think is the support that you should provide to MAUSD? And his response was more behind the scenes, less in front. So
right.
He has weighed in on that some.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sandy and Kevin.
I just mirror what Steve says in terms of efficiency, and we could get questions to you, because the first one that comes to mind is, what does he mean by more behind the scenes and ahead? Like, I don't need a meeting. You can ask him that question. I'm sure he could flesh that out. You could let us know what he says, and then we can go from there too. Like, what does he really think he can provide?
Okay. And Kevin.
I'm, as we were starting talking about another meeting, I'm becoming concerned about moving forward. this seems like we should be moving with a sense of urgency, if you will. And if we contemplate questions for another meeting, is that the facilities one, or is that the next more normal meeting? If it's the next normal one, it's a month gone by, and then there's going to be another month. And I think we need to also think about doing this in a fashion that we get on with it.
My thought is that we would get this moving by the next facilities meeting. Really use that time at that meeting, not an additional one if we can help it.
I just want to reiterate, I like Steve's idea of before Patrick's meeting on Monday, get him questions that we had that we would like for him to address, among all the other things. I'm sure, Patrick, that you've listened to us, I know, really carefully. And then maybe, Patrick, could you just report back to us what he says? And then, because I don't, part of me goes, I don't know if I need a whole nother meeting with Nate, you know, that's another hour or two, and the cost that comes with that versus deciding that sounds great what his answers were. Why don't we work up numbers and hear how much it's really going to cost, you know, taking that next step. Again, I don't know if that'll be where I am based on what your meeting is on Monday, but I do think it's a way of maybe moving forward instead of having another meeting. We may not need it.
I guess what would help me along those lines, Sandy, is I don't know that I have a great read right now where the board falls in terms of the kind of support. I tried to summarize what I thought I was hearing. I didn't really get a good read on if that sounded like it was, you know, in the ballpark of where the board wants to go with Nate, or if I was way off. That would help, right? Because I think I can collect all of your questions. Chances are there's going to be some divergence in the questions even that are submitted, and it may not help point in a direction the board's interested in going and the kind of work with Nate. We know Nate says more behind the scenes, less in front of the scenes. We don't know exactly what that means. I can ask more about that. But
can he give us proposals?
Forward, I just would look at like a better read from the board.
Part of it for me is, what is he proposing? I mean, he heard us for two. I mean, he did I thought he did a very good presentation, and he heard somewhat from the board a little bit. And he knows what's going on with our issues right now, you know, so with shrinking enrollment, I'd love to hear proposals from him, and what he thinks that might cost based on what he knows. It's kind of like the reverse direction, like he knows what we're going through. What do you think you can bring to us, and what do you propose that might cost? Because then I feel like I can actually say, okay, what do I think of that? And then can come back with an answer. It's sort of hard not knowing what he actually thinks might be able to help us with the process.
Kristen, and then Krista. Kristen, you're muted.
Sorry. I mean, we could just say, I feel stuck. From his experience, what process would he recommend? I mean, I think it's kind of simple. Again, I think we get back to that we don't all have the same, we're not defining this as the same problem. And I just remembered something, that whenever a group is bigger than 10, it's much harder to run the group and get any cohesive stuff. We have 13. So, I mean, being on a 5-person board was much easier. I'll just say that, but just to get direction and go, and maybe that's partly what we're experiencing. But yeah, I would just frame it as we're stuck. Can you help us with our process at this point?
Okay, and Krista, and then Liz.
I was wondering if I could make a motion. And I'm going to just start out there, and then, you know, you guys can decide if you like it or not. But my motion was to direct Patrick to, on his next meeting with Nate, ask for a scope of work on establishing a process for us to undergo and independent evaluation of proposals, and to come back to the board with that. And
I'll second.
Yeah, second.
Okay, any discussion? Sandy?
Patrick, do you need a budget from us for that? Because that will probably take him work to do. Do you need that approval as well?
I don't know that I do. I feel like knowing that this is work that the board supports, like we have the funds, it will sort of divert from the construction services line is mostly where this would come from. So there may be some actual facilities improvement projects that we do less of to utilize funds for this, which I think from a long range perspective makes good sense. So I'm not concerned about the funds being available to support this work. So I don't think that's necessary.
Okay, Kevin?
I'm generally okay with the motion, but I would try to frame even though we're asking him to tell us, I would try to frame, I think, along with what Steve or somebody else said about, we're looking for a coach as opposed to somebody to stand behind us and kind of whisper in our ear. So, yeah, I think we want somebody a little bit more active than what I'm hearing Patrick say he's thinking, but we don't necessarily want this, person way up front. I think we want a coach, to have him consider coaching us, and maybe that term is the right one to word, or maybe there's something else that makes more sense. But I think we want to kick up the game a little bit, but not put him out front.
Okay. Any other discussion? Chris Pearsall, can you read the motion back? I missed a couple of words, so I don't have it the complete motion. So can you read it back?
I'll try. Direct Superintendent Reen to ask for a scope of work on establishing a process for the board to undergo an independent proposals from Nate Levinson.
it was a little different at the end there. The first part's right, and then and the scope of work includes two pieces: a process for evaluating proposals.
Okay.
Is the first part, and then the second part is providing independent analysis of proposals or something along those lines.
Independent evaluation of proposals.
Yes, thank you.
Is what I got. I got that end part. I missed a couple words in the middle. Okay.
Just a process point. Important, at least important to acknowledge. This agenda item wasn't warned as an action item. It was warned as a discussion item. I don't know that it prohibits you from acting, but just important to call it out. Practice had been in the past to only act on warned action items. Having said that, I also don't know that I don't know that I feel I need an action item to engage in this work. It makes sense to me. So I'm comfortable with whatever direction it goes. I just felt that it was important to make that known.
I was actually going to say something along the same lines, but I thought maybe I'd be nitpicking.
All that to say, and I get it, and with or without the action, I can make that happen, and it makes sense to make that happen.
I'm fine to remove my motion if we can just keep the ball rolling in the direction of you doing something along those lines, if we all agree.
At least we stated it clearly.
Okay.
Right.
All right. So you're removing the motion, Krista? Okay.
Yep.
All right. Okay. Patrick, I think that is clear enough in what was explained that you have some direction to go on. Okay. I'm going to try and get us done by 9:30. So bear with me. Here we go. The next item is a discussion item, was an example of a procedure for filling board vacancies. It was just a process. I tried to spell out the process for everybody to see and the questions that we could use if we have multiple interests in filling a board vacancy. If you have any comments, feel free to send them to me. What will happen is if I get comments, I'll try and make changes. If not, we'll put it in the consent agenda to approve it for posting as a board procedure. And then after it's approved, I think I have the words wrong. We'll get it right in the agenda. Yeah, approve for posting, and then we'll eventually approve adoption or adopt it. So send me your comments if you have any on the procedure that was attached. My next question is regarding a procedure for exit interviews. First of all, I need to know, is the board as a whole interested in conducting exit interviews? Yes or no? This would be with members. Exiting members. So I'm seeing 3, 4 up, 5 up, and 6 up, and 3, 4 sideways. So sideways, 5 sideways. So it sounds like I didn't want to invest the time in creating a procedure for how to do it if the board wasn't interested. It sounds like it's interested. I'll bring it as a discussion item to look at, and then you can send feedbacks to me, and then we can include it for posting and then adoption through that process. So I'll work on it. I just didn't want to spend the time working on it if you all said, no, we don't want to do that. Okay. All right. As we spoke earlier in the meeting, there is an item that needs further discussion in executive session around 16 VSA 313A7, and it's academic records or suspension or discipline of students. We do not, under this title, have to determine that premature knowledge would put the district at a disadvantage. We can simply move to go into executive session. Patrick, is there anyone else besides yourself you'd like to include?
I think we can have Katrina and Susan invited in.
So we'll invite Patrick and Katrina and Susan. It's my expectation after the brief executive session, we've come out for public comment, our meeting evaluation, and then adjourn. There'll be no action taken when we come out of other than to adjourn. Okay, so if that's clear, is there someone willing to make a motion to go into executive session under 16 VSA 313A7, academic records or suspension or discipline of students?
I so moved.
Moved, Andrew.
Or I'll second Sandy,
Sandy,
including those to be invited.
and we'll invite Patrick, Katrina, and Susan, and we will go in at 9:18. So Patrick, can you send us to a breakout room?
Yeah.
Okay, so you'll get the invitation, and then we'll see you in the breakout room. Need that elevator music.
Don, so I'm all set. We're going off the air. I guess so.
Hey, Paul, how you doing? I think you're muted.
Yeah, I'm good. I've been away for a couple of weeks, so I'm trying to figure out what it is that I missed. And I think last night's meeting, probably I should look at to understand what the consultant is. I'm glad that they are thinking that they need more time than August. And I think I'm glad that they're they're getting a consultant, somebody to guide them through the process.
Yeah, I think the minutes are posted from the meeting with Nate Levinson, and I was there, and he did have some good recommendations for the board, really to focus on process, to build in community trust through community leaders and principals. So that felt really hopeful and positive. Yeah, it felt like a good use of a few hours, and I hope the board will continue to be receptive to his comments, that it's part head and part heart, and without taking into account the heart, you can't move anything forward. So yeah, it was good. And then last night there was another long meeting with the folks in Virgins, that school project, and they're going to form a merger study committee and spend 7 months or so. It's a really fast timeline to look into possible merger with is it Addison Northwest?
Yeah, that's a complicated process. Was there any discussion at all about trying to pull another high school in, like Middlebury?
Not yet. That was not part of the discussion, but I'm working on that with some folks in town about how can we think about what a countywide high school would look like. And anyway, more to say on that, but it wasn't part of the discussion last night. It was pretty narrow scope in terms of looking at a merger study, very much in the vein of merging and not necessarily just administrative sharing or some other kind of collaborative strategies of looking at containing costs between the two districts. So
I got to believe one of the big decisions is where to house a merged high school.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you have any sense about, is the Virgins High School in better shape than Mount Abe as a physical plant?
I do think it's in better shape than Mount Abe, and I'm not quite sure that it's in great shape or capacity wise what it can sustain. Yeah, but I think Mount Abe kind of in the county is really the sort of black sheep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's too bad.
Yeah, lots happening, but yeah, if you get a chance to watch the meeting or at least read the minutes from Nate Levinson, it definitely some good food for thought, and I could really see people chewing on some of his comments that we really did kind of bugger up the process here. And one thing I found really insightful was he said, we just shouldn't use scare tactics. Don't try to scare people with what their schools are going to look like in 5 years. And, I was like, whoa, checkbox, that happened, checkbox, that happened.
Yeah. Yeah, it's, in my experience, these kinds of things are just messy. There's just no way around it, because in actuality, it's an exercise in democracy, and that's messy. As much as we'd like it to be, smooth running with a straight line, it's just not. And
you don't know until you start out on the process, and everyone's learning and coming up to speed at different times. That's another. We're all at different levels of understanding and abilities to tune in and catch up on things, and so it's a lot to take on, in addition to folks' day jobs and families and other commitments.
Yeah, I'm very appreciative of volunteer boards. A lot of people don't understand that they're volunteers and not experts, and it is. People have got lives, they got jobs, they got families. And so it's, I mean, to meet 2 nights in 1 week, I mean, that's significant.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I'm appreciative of the work they do.
Yeah, lucky for me, I can have my video off and be in my pajamas and have done dinner and bedtime. And there is one benefit of Zoom.
Yeah, I often wonder when we go back to normal, whatever normal is. I don't think Zoom is going to disappear. I think people have gotten used to it and appreciate it. Not to say we shouldn't have some in-person meetings, but my sense is we're going to have more and more virtual meetings.
Yeah, I think a nice combination is always always helpful when we can think about reducing our carbon footprint or allowing more access into a meeting for people to do it from home. Then those are good kind of criteria for thinking about Zoom.
Yeah, and just simple thing like, don't have to drive in the snow.
Yeah. Oh.
So you have young kids that are in the Lincoln School?
I have a 2.5-year-old, so she will be in the Lincoln School. That's my hope. Yeah, I actually had a meeting with Tori this week too, just to get a little sense of what she's thinking, and what community members how we can support our schools across the district, and just some really good insight, I think, about what the years ahead will look like, and bringing more people into the fold in our town schools so that we get greater buy-in from the community. We offer more things for more people. We offer childcare, we offer elder meals, we offer community space and commercial kitchen space, and all these kind of creative ways of thinking about the school building as really a community asset.
Yeah, I think that's a great thought. One of the things I've realized is so few of our towns have any sort of central place for community members to meet and have activities. And the school is certainly one of those. I remember when my kids were in the school, I mean, that was our whole life practically was revolved around the school. So yeah, I think that's a great idea. Find more utilization of just the physical facilities.
Yeah, and really thinking about that in a kind of broader scope. It's not necessarily about increasing revenue, but it increases community buy-in, which increases the support for our town schools when it comes to our tax dollars, because people find services there, regardless of where you are in your kind of, life trajectory, whether you have school-age kids or, we have a real need for childcare. We have a real need for elder services. We can think about continuing education and all sorts of ways of really mobilizing what a school can be and what a school can do, and seeing that enacted in our community schools, because we do have the space to make that happen.
Yeah, we do. And we have a building that's in good shape because of the money that was spent, I guess, 5 or 6 years ago.
Yeah.
The other thing I think we need in town, and I'm beginning to think about this and see if other people are interested, is affordable housing.
Absolutely. I was just starting to, percolate that in my brain to talk to you about is, I can count multiple families that I know want to live in Lincoln or want to live in, one of the 5 town communities and can't find housing here. And we're in a really interesting, just, anecdotally, I see that there's a lot of, our community is aging, but they're aging in place. They're not moving out of their home.
Right.
And I think we will see more turnover in the next 10 years. But between now and then, we don't have a lot of houses for sale or for rent. And I think that could be a huge driving factor in bringing people to town and keeping people in town. And combine that with good 0 to 3 childcare, our wonderful preschool, our phenomenal elementary school. I mean, it's the golden ticket for families, and I speak as one of those families. But it's hard to find a place to live. And can we think creatively as a town? How can we change some of the, is it zoning and planning to allow for a little bit more housing opportunities? I was just driving maybe a couple of weeks ago down through Huntington. Is it Gore Road, kind of going through up Richmond, and there's a new sort of community being built there. It looks kind of like a co-op, like a housing co-op, where families have individual houses, but they're sort of shared, shared driveway, what I would assume would be shared utilities and septic and all of those things. And it's in an area that, is fairly rural, but has a sort of consolidated area for housing. And I'd love to know what's the temperature for something like that in Lincoln?
Well, there is interest because I've talked to several people. I also talked to a woman who's headed up 3 affordable housing successful projects in the Randolph area. And it would be great for us to get a committee together. It's as this decision is, it's a complicated process, but it can be done. There are examples where it's been done.
Yeah, absolutely. It's part of Brian Bates and I are working on a proposal that he's got a couple of kids, 3 kids, I think, in the elementary school, and is a family doc at Mountain Health Center. And,
oh yeah, right. Yep.
Kind of part of this younger cohort of families living in town. And we're working on a proposal for the board that really brings in some of these ideas and some of these possible collaborations, and looks at it at a sustainability approach for our schools that not only reduces spending, but also brings and keeps families here and builds on the assets that we have in our schools, and takes kind of a 3-legged approach, so to speak, instead of just, well, we just have to reduce spending. We also have to bring people here and keep people here and support them through our communities. And schools are one of those components, but it also comes with housing and childcare and elder care and all the things that make for quality life and quality living.
Boy, you are really thinking about this. Each one of those is a huge topic. The elder care, I think, is a big challenge. I just don't think we as a government or society have figured out the policies we need in place to take care of our elders as that population grows. I've just gone through this with my mother in her 90s, and it's not an easy process to find the right living situation, the right care. It's a lot more complicated than I had imagined.
Oh, I'm sure, and I'm sure it's way more complicated than I will ever know. But it's worth us considering, as we see our population aging, and we're so focused on the fact that there's fewer and fewer children, but there's also greater and greater elders. And so how do we shift that thinking to say, well, how can we provide and care for our community through their lifespan, and schools and schools really with community support and driven largely by what, in my sort of pipe dream, by our towns, and would be able to offer some of those supports. Yeah.
I was on the teen center board when they were just getting started in Middlebury. And one of the things that worked out, and it turned out that in the beginning they were co-housed in the senior center in Middlebury. And one of the things that turned out to be a real plus was the interaction between seniors and teenagers. It was just really amazing to see what each of those groups got out of it. There was some real synergy there.
Yeah, I one of my favorite memories of my daughter's kind of infancy was I was in Middlebury and we went to the senior center. My husband was doing a workshop there and we went to drop something off, and she and I ended up spending the whole afternoon just hanging out with the seniors and the activities. And, you know, it's a really natural relationship.
Yeah.
And in our sort of siloed society, we've forgotten about that, you know, and what I see as a community member is we don't have good early childcare, and there isn't the same kind of program that Middlebury has for seniors in this area. You know, the Middlebury Senior Center was just such a dynamic and incredible place for folks to be.
Yep.
And I don't see that in our five-town area, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, you're absolutely right. There is a need for that. Because we are 5 separate towns, I think it becomes more difficult to do. It's almost as if, well, on the county level, you know, we have the Regional Planning Center, which has been very helpful on county projects. And it seems to me we need something similar that would look at the 5 towns, or however you want to define the area that's doing something. But you got 5 different select boards, and it takes a lot of time to harness them to all go in the same direction.
Absolutely. Yeah, it sounds like quite a feat of you know, gravity.
Yeah, but you're absolutely right. The need is there for all of these kinds of things. And we're just, it drives me crazy that people say we just don't have enough money to do these things.
Yeah, what was our federal spending on the military budget? You know, that's where I keep returning, is like,
yep.
It's just the priorities, you know, and priorities, ultimately, I'm just one small person living in, you know, a rural town in Vermont, but collectively, you know, priorities can be shifted and perspectives can be broadened. It just takes tremendous energy and time. And I do feel like we're in a period where there's some really large forces at play. We're going to see what I hope is some real change at a federal level over the next few years, and the possibility of infrastructure bills and you know, Biden's families bill coming up this week. And I mean, I'm not totally naive to think that it'll all happen with one stroke of a pen, but the possibilities are there, and to have that kind of societal shift is a really it's a tremendous moment, and we have to be paying attention to that, you know.
Yeah, I agree with you that there are possibilities for real shifts in our society based on I'm impressed with Biden's team because they are so experienced, and it really says to me, if you're going to run a big government, you have to have people who are experienced. And because they've been there before, I think they can get things done.
I haven't felt this hopeful about any of it for a long time, you know, and really, I think measurable impacts in people's lives and in communities. And, you know, if we see federal family leave programs, I know firsthand that will have an effect on how many people are having kids and when they're having kids and how many kids they're having, because it's impossible right now, to really, most families need 2 income earners, and most folks don't have paid family leave. Even if they're working what I would say are sort of middle class white collar jobs, you get to use your vacation time.
Yeah.
And then good luck and figure it out. Of course people are reducing the amount of kids they're having because it's bonkers.
Yeah, I remember the problems of my wife and I when we lived in DC, both had good jobs. And it was always a question, it was always a struggle to find what our kids were going to do after school, between when school ends and we got home. And yeah. I mean, it's what lots of parents go through. It's just, where do you find it at almost any age until they become teenagers? It's a question of, where do you find good supervision for kids? We were fortunate in the elementary school my kids went to, is they had an after school program.
Yeah.
And the kids could be there till 6 o'clock, and it was well supervised.
Yeah, and we do as well. I mean, I know there's this sort of ELP, the extended learning program that happens in the MAUSD district, which is great, and I think really serves families. But thinking about that 0 to 3 range, and those are the kids that are going to start kindergarten eventually, and without having good quality care and being supportive of families to have those kids, it's only natural that people have fewer kids or wait until later in life to have kids. And we can see all of those demographic shifts at a really micro level right now.
Yep. Be interesting to see in Lincoln what the percentage is in terms of age groups.
Like how many 0 to 3 kids there are in Lincoln.
Yeah, and also adults. I mean, how many 20 to 40 years old are there? How many 40 to 60-year-olds? But the school, it's important for the school to do any forecast. It seems to me it's important to know who the kids are that are up and coming.
Yeah, absolutely. And in my conversations with Tori, she said that the school is really ripe for a 0 to 3 childcare program. They have the space. We have a beautiful facility. There's great outdoor space, and there's great need in town. We just have to figure out how do we bring that kind of service into a school. And I do think we're going to see a lot more federal and state dollars for early childcare. And so it may be something really worth considering, that we think about how do we get our schools to serve that population, so that not only are we meeting families' needs, we're also accessing a pretty siloed pot of money for early childcare.
When my kids were in the Lincoln Elementary School, they would get on the bus when school was over, and the bus would go up to Nancy McDonald's house. I don't know if you know Nancy. And 16 kids would get off at Nancy's because she had the daycare.
Yeah.
And those kids just loved it. And she did a great job. And those kids bonded. So they continue to talk to one another. But Nancy would not be able to do it now because of all the regulations.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to see what sort of rolls out over the next, 6 months, year, 2-year timeline. And I do think, not pushing us to this August deadline, because things have shifted pretty dramatically since December.
Yes.
You know, the ed fund revenue is much rosier, and there's all of this sort of federal money. Even though it's one-time money, it's definitely supportive of the district. And, you know, there's those early projections aren't coming to pass, so we do have time.
Yeah, I thought Patrick, in his quiet way, was indicating that tonight. You know, his saying there's no hard date, I think is different than what everybody thought back in December and January.
Yeah, I've been noticing that too, just kind of around the county, you know, the sort of Addison Northwest and Addison Central, and they'd come out with proposals in the last year or so to close schools, and pretty drastic proposals that were met with, as you can imagine, some community opposition. And, you know, everything is sort of kind of rolled back. Timelines have changed, proposals have dropped, and, you know, the pieces have been moved around yet again. So everybody's back. Nice chatting with you, Paul.
Good to see you. Take
Yeah,
care. Thanks.
you too.
Okay, Chris, we were out at 9:46.
Okay.
Okay. This time, is there any public comment? Paul Ferlenza. Nope, you're still muted, Paul.
Thank you. Paul Forlenza in Lincoln, on the Lincoln Select Board. I just want to encourage the board to continue going. I heard tonight, and I've heard before, some frustration about whether you're moving forward or not. And as an outsider, it does look to me that you are moving forward. Not pretty. These things are never pretty. And they're not pretty because it's an exercise in democracy. And democracy, you know, when they talk about making laws, it's about making sausage. The other thing I wanted to say was that I think this was Kevin's question, which was, have you heard from any of the other groups? I just want to reassure you that the Lincoln Reimagine group, which has morphed into the MAUSD group, with all 5 towns represented, will put in a proposal, and it will be a significant proposal. So I know that group is looking forward to that opportunity. So thanks.
All right, thank you for the update and the encouragement. Any other public comment? Okay. Chris, can you run through the meeting evaluation?
Ken,
Thank you.
no problem. What's the level of engagement of all board members, high or low?
Hi. Yep, I'm seeing lots of thumbs up.
Okay. Was the agenda followed, yes or no?
Thumbs up. Yes.
Any comments?
Nope, not seeing any.
Does the chair effectively establish the agenda and materials for distribution to the board, yes or no?
Thumbs, thumbs, got thumbs.
Any comments? Okay, I know what everybody's thinking. Is the chair effective in fostering a professional culture regarding fair and open deliberation, full participation of all members, and ensuring the integrity of the board process, yes or no? Any comments?
Thumbs, you got thumbs.
All right, other feedback for the chair? Okay, what went well with the meeting? Over?
I think one of the things that went well tonight is we didn't have any controversial issues or relatively highly controversial issues.
I appreciated all the discussion. You know, I really appreciate hearing from everyone.
It was good discussion.
Don, don't take off points for spelling at this point when you read this, okay?
That's all right. Go for it.
Okay. What suggestions do you have for ways to improve future meetings?
We got to get quicker or more efficient.
All right, anybody else? All right, that's a wrap.
Okay. Is there a motion to adjourn at 9:51?
So moved.
So moved, Krista.
I'll second Andrew.
Krista and Andrew. All those in favor of adjourning at 9:51, please say aye or give me a thumbs up. Oh,
Aye.
thumbs up.
Aye.
All right.
Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you,
Motion.
John. Thank you, Patrick.
Thank you,
Floyd.
everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Katrina.
All right, it was late.
Good night.
Night.